Good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is being televised live on AACPS TV and streamed on AACPS YouTube channel. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room. Please take a look at it. So please make sure you read those if you have not already. Please pause for the invocation. O God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance, stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We will now move on to item 2.03, approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes
Second.
as written.
Do I have consensus? Thank you. Item 2.04, establish agenda order.
Madam President, I move that the board add as agenda item 7.06 the following: terms of employment for Unit 1 employees for fiscal year 2023, and further that the board hear this item after item 2.05 on today's agenda.
So moved or second? Whichever.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any questions? No? Ms. Howe?
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell, Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Mr. McGrath,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. So now we need to approve the amended
Motion
agenda.
to amend, or motion to approve the amended.
The agenda is amended.
Yeah.
Agenda is amended.
And there was a second, I believe. Okay,
Mr. Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell, Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Mr. McGrath,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
thank you. Item 2.05, recognitions. I believe we do not have any particular recognitions today. So we will move on to the agenda item just added. Dr. Bedell. Nope.
All right. Madam President, we will have presentation from our chief negotiator on this item. And at the conclusion of that, the superintendent recommends approval of the terms of employment for Unit 1 employees for FY23. So we'll pass it over.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Melissa Rawls, and I am the Director of Employee Relations. To Dr. Tobin, Dr. Bedell, and members of the board, the provisions of the current negotiated agreement between the Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County and the Board of Education of Anne Arundel County expired on June 30th, 2022. The board and TAC were unable to reach a tentative agreement for ratification for FY23 negotiations, and a notice of determination that an impasse in negotiations had been reached was requested by TAC and subsequently issued by the Public School Labor Relations Board on July 10th, 2022, which ordered the parties to commence mediation. On July 29th, 2022, the PSLRB was notified by TAC that the mediation did not result in a settlement, and pursuant to the Maryland Code Annotated Education, Article 6-408E5, The mediator in this matter issued a written offer to both parties and the PSLRB. Subsequently, TAC rejected the mediator's offer of settlement and requested arbitration before the PSLRB. That arbitration was held on August 29th, 2022. In its August 31st, 2022 decision, the PSLRB selected and adopted the mediator's complete offer of settlement, which are now before you to be adopted as terms of employment for Unit 1 employees effective July 1, 2022. The terms included in the mediator's offer of settlement, which include but are not limited to the following: a one-step increase for eligible Unit 1 employees and a 4% COLA for all Unit 1 employees. The continuation of the class coverage pay MOU through FY23. An extension of the current MOU for $10 differential pay related to learning loss programs and exclusive of ESSER funds through August 31st, 2024. Exclusive use of ESSER funds through August 31st, 2024. An MOU to pay a total not to exceed $1,500 in a LEADS grant approved by the Maryland State Department of Education as a stipend to special educators and related service providers over a 2-year period beginning in FY23 through FY24. And then finally, that non-professional duties for Unit 1 employees will not exceed 120 minutes per week. I request that the board adopt the terms of employment as ordered by the PSLRB. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rawls. Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Do members have questions, or do I hear a motion at this time? Ms. Schallheim?
If there's no questions, I would like to move at the appropriate time to accept the terms
Okay,
as spoken.
all right. Any questions or a second? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any questions? No?
Mr.
Ms. Howe?
Silkworth?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rawls. I also neglected to mention just before this on another matter, just as a point of clarification on today's agenda, because we had received some questions from members of the public. Item 5.03 is the virtual day instruction plan for inclement weather days. It is not about virtual in the event of teacher vacancies, and I know there had been some confusion around that, so thank you. Okay, at this time, we will move to Section 3, public comments. Speakers will be allotted 2 minutes each and may not allocate their time to others. The yellow light below me will shine when you have 30 seconds remaining. The red light below me will shine and you will hear a tone when your time has expired. The board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting. Student-specific and personnel matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. And in light of some previous concerns, let me add, your testimony should not be directed at particular individuals. It should be directed at the entire board, as all our decisions are made as a collective entity. Please speak only on the topic which you signed up to speak on. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer sessions with speakers. Please remain, again, civil, and please no labeling or ad hominem attacks on anyone with whom you disagree. For the record, please give your name before speaking. Any handouts should be given to the board assistant. So at this time, I will call up Speakers on item 4.01, the President's Report, Ms. Tony Pratt.
My name is Tony Strong Pratt, and good evening, Dr. Bedell, Dr. Tobin, and the board. So, not sure what was under the president's or the superintendent's agenda. As we know that there is an internet divide, a digital divide, and not all people can access the internet. So my first issue is with the internet. The majority of the correspondence has been coming via internet. There are a lot of people in underserved communities who have not been able to access that. And I think that is an ongoing problem that has been expressed but not corrected. The second thing that I will talk about is the transportation issue. And I talk about the transportation issue as the owner of People Builders Consultant and an advocate for our communities. I have been getting calls like you wouldn't believe on things that you may not have foreseen with this traffic problem, because it just didn't start. We can go back a couple of years ago when this transportation problem started, but now it has exacerbated throughout our nation. But I'm talking about our county. First of all, we have the most at-risk, underserved communities without buses, with parents who don't have means to get their kids to school. Whether you know it or not, Phoenix Center has no kids because they're not coming to school because they don't have a way and they don't have means. The parents who do have means are using their rent money and are using other bill money, which is going to cause other unforeseen issues with now being possibly evicted because they don't have the money. We have students standing up on buses. We have students sitting on floor on buses. And another thing that you did was you had people sign up to ride buses. The last I checked, the policy says that anybody that's within a certain jurisdiction of school have a right to ride the buses. We had a sign up for buses, but we didn't think through enough to, hey, now we need a roster for the bus drivers to know who signed up for the buses to be able to ride. So therefore causing an increased overcrowding of the buses. It's my time, but I signed up to speak at another one. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pratt. Don't go far. Item 4.02, Ms. Pratt, Ms. Lisa Van Buskirk, and Ms. Julie Hummer.
So I'm Tony Strong Pratt again, and I will continue with talking about transportation issues. Just like a hurricane or tornado, we put things in place beforehand, unforeseen issues. There are so many unforeseen issues that when we had to talk about school openings, as everybody said, well, the data says, well, data doesn't tell the whole story. Nobody went to any communities or anybody to say, how is this going to affect you? What is this going to cause? We have people here that's representing these issues that I'm talking about. A lot of them couldn't get off from work. A lot of them are taking time off from work, and some of them had gotten fired because now they have to take their kids to school. Because guess what? The kids who are in high school are now not the ones who can get them on the buses or get them off the bus. Well, now not only do we have to look at that, but now the time is going to change. It's going to be dark when some of these elementary school kids have to get on the bus. Now, God forbid the parents can't take off again. So we're going to have kindergartners standing at a bus. Stop. When we have predators, we have violence in our city, what are we going to do? So I sit here upset because we have been reactionary for too long. It's about being proactive. Before we put things in place, we need to make a concerted effort to get people together who this is going to affect mostly and say, what are the concerns that you have that we can put a concrete plan in place to address these? Now we're in this chaos, this crisis moment, and we don't know what to do. So I would suggest, board, that when we put task force together and when we're listening to people that this is going to affect, that we go to the communities that are going to be affected and have those people at the table, because everybody can't tell my story like I can. Everybody can't tell their story like they can. So to be fair, we need to be fair and start to be proactive and not reactionary. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pratt. Ms. Van Buskirk.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board of Education, and welcome to Dr. Bedell. I'm Lisa Van Buskirk of Start School Later, Anne Arundel County, testifying for my 9th school year before the board and the 8th and hopefully last year representing Start School Later. Instead of beating up the board and AACPS over transportation, because Ms. Pratt already did, like I normally do after school starts, I want to highlight a few things that have actually improved. AACPS's school hours meet the requirements for the second tier of the Orange Ribbon for Healthy School Hours, established in 2016 by the General Assembly and sponsored by Anne Arundel County's own Senator Brian Simonaire. With tweaks to the pre-7 a.m. elementary bus stops and routes to address the board's intentions to not have students at bus stops before civil dawn, AACPS could meet the first tier of recognition. AACPS would be the first school system to achieve either recognition level in our state. For the first time since the software was purchased in August of 2015, with the help of Prismatic Services, the Transportation Department has actually used Xeon to assign students to bus stops and use those bus stops to create bus routes. I've heard, even in the first week, teachers are noticing positive differences in students at middle and high schools from the later start times. Our younger learners at schools that used to start as late as 9:45 are also benefiting. Families are quietly acknowledging that the new hours can work. High school buses are no longer arriving 30 or even 40 minutes before the bell. I will no longer need to submit a Maryland Public Information Act request for bus arrival times because the website clearly articulates that elementary school routes are designed to deliver students 20 minutes before the bell and secondary students 15 minutes before the bell. And soon all our buses will be equipped with a stop arm camera systems and associated GPS, and I hope that the school board will investigate connecting those GPSs to notification systems to better serve our communities regarding outages and delays. While some may wish to return to the previous school hours, as Maya Angelou said, do the best you can until you know better, and when you know better, do better. To do better means we cannot regress to the previous school hours, despite many people's pleas. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hummer, welcome back. You should be on, yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, Dr. Bedell and many of my former colleagues. I'm here this morning as the parent of 2 Meade High School students, and as a former teacher, I brought my visual. This is Miss Frizzle and her magic school bus. It is my hope that she has taken a job with AACPS because it is only with her magic school bus that my children and thousands of others will ever arrive to school on time. The last stop on the elementary route before ours is to be picked up at 7:36 a.m. and the first stop on our route 10 miles away is to be picked up at 7:37 a.m. Unless we have Miss Frizzle to bend the rules of space and time, this schedule cannot be met, and our students will always arrive 15 to 30 minutes late each day, the middle schoolers even later. I know the transportation system and its challenges better than 99.9% of the people in this county. And to be blunt, the current times between schools are not working. And as is the case with ours, they never will. Ours are not due to bus driver shortages. They are due to lack of time. Any positive mental health effects brought about by the change in start times are being negated by the stress and anxiety thousands of students are experiencing every day as they worry if their bus will arrive, if it does, how late it will be, and how much instruction will they have missed, and will there be a bus to bring them home. I continue to hear board members say that the change in start times is a financially cost-neutral plan due to efficiencies made in the system. These efficiencies have resulted in overcrowded buses and unworkable routes. If hundreds of students are being turned away from buses because they're already at or over capacity, that is not cost neutral. If thousands of students are not arriving to school on time or at all, that is not cost neutral. If the goal of the change is to improve the mental and emotional health of students, then that must be the goal, not to be financially cost neutral. As you plan the FY 2024 budget, please be real about the resources and costs that are needed to achieve the healthier start times goal without creating massive transportation inequities. Until then, every morning I will continue picking up as many students as I possibly can so they can get to school on time. But I know every day there are children who just stay home because they have no reliable transportation, and that is a tragedy. Where is Miss Frizzle when we need her?
Thank you, Ms. Hummer. Item 5.03 Virtual Day Instruction Plan, Ms. Nicole Disney Bates.
I too brought my visual.
Yeah.
I'm copying you, Julie Hummer. All right. Hello. I am Nicole Disney Bates. I'm the TAG president, Dr. Tobin, Dr. Bedell, Board of Education. All right. It is starting to feel like fall outside. Today, I could wear a sweater. It wasn't miserable hot. And Starbucks is finally serving my pumpkin spice latte. And because it's almost fall, it means that in Maryland fashion, it's really almost winter. It means that we're going to get the cold and the snow. And because of that, MSDE has recently allowed for virtual instruction to occur on snow days. And because of this, they won't count. But at the same time, do we really want to take away the joy of a snow day? It's a day that allows for our students, our families, our communities, our teachers to enjoy a snow day, to go outside and play in the snow. But on the other side, consistent instruction. How do we provide it if there's snow days? We don't want to go too far in the summer. We don't want students to miss more than maybe a day. So just like that, again, you all have a balancing act. Snow days, virtual instruction days. We have the same balancing act occurring here regularly, right? This here is my base 10 block. Students use this for math instruction. Helps them understand place value. This is a hundreds place value. When we look for balance, we want our students to be 21st century learners. We want them to be able to use technology and live in a tech-based world. But we also want our students to experience hands-on education using one of these. What I asked for today is to have balance. Balance snow days for the need of continuous instruction. Balance the tools of technology with the students' need to experience education. Education is not a one-size-fits-all approach, but rather a balance of different strategies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Disney Bates. So Mr. Silkworth will get settled and we'll take on our virtual testimony when he's ready.
Good afternoon and welcome to the virtual portion of our public comment. Speakers will be allowed 2 minutes each and may not allocate their time to others. Ms. Howe will indicate when your time has expired. The board asks that comments remain civil and appropriate for the various audiences that may be watching or viewing this meeting. Student-specific and personal matters are confidential and cannot be discussed in this forum. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer session with speakers. For the record, please give your name before speaking. Our first speaker on item 4.01 President's Report is Alan Shea.
Yes, my name is Alan Shea. I have 5 points to stress basically. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Point number one is there are 80 to 90 driver shortage. So I don't know what's the next step. Second is, does BOE has a solution? Based on my conversation with high-level transportation agency, basically transportation implied to me that BOE throw them under the bus. They don't have a solution. Number third, is BOE consider rollback all the hours to the back where high school bus can use to take the primary school and then primary school taking the middle school bus, can reuse it. And then number four is, who does the board answer to? Because I talked to executive branch, I talked to House representative and my Senate candidate. Nobody know they can talk to you guys. They say they cannot do anything. The last point is, I want to stress it. My wife had to go to about 3 trips one day. Morning, take my daughter to middle school, and then afternoon, take my high school student back home, and then afternoon go and pick her up. She had to quit her part-time job. These are very, very serious impact I live in Anne County for what, 20 years? This never happened. You know, when you guys consider new topic, whatever, do you guys do research? I don't know. That's what I want to say.
Thank you. Our next speaker, speaking on item 4.01, President's Report, Sybil Hartsock.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Bedell and members of the board. As said, my name is Sybil Hartzell, and I speak to you today as a lifetime Anne Arundel County resident and a parent of 14 years. Like many of you, I believe the children are our future, and I came here today to say that they and many Anne Arundel County families are suffering on multiple fronts. But I do believe together we can change that. The more I attempt to advocate for my child's education post-COVID, she's an IEP holder, the more I realize that the pleas of teachers, students, and parents are not being adequately, timely, nor safely addressed. We are not seeing the creative, innovative solutions fast enough to combat the rapidly declining mental health and safety of our community. And hearing Ms. Jackson state the increased number of referrals for the possession or use of firearms or weapons in the 2021 school year is one frightening example. Many arguments get heated not because our opinions clash, but because we fail to show we care. In conflict, the most important step isn't to defend your position, it's to reinforce your relationships. It's easier to accept that you're not like-minded if you're like-hearted. And I greatly appreciate the few who took the stance to address the very important unresolved issues at the start of this school year. The work is far from done, and I'd like to see more transparency from you in recognizing the fact and the ways you're working with your communities for solutions. It's time to revisit school start time options. It's time to expand virtual options. It's time to ask for help because we all agree that the safety of our children should always come first. I asked today why the CAC is failing to perform or not being utilized. There's not been a meeting held since February. Why? The policy requires a minimum of 6 meetings annually, and to date, there has been 2. Why? You have 27 out of 32 CAC positions filled. Why? According to the latest board meeting, we have 300 classroom vacancies and 222 operational vacancies. Why? I do not believe we have a communication issue. We have a connection issue. We have egos blocking the needed vulnerability to solve these
Please
problems.
summarize.
In closing, unless a unified connection is made, this suffering will continue. Please do not just hear us, but find a way to connect with us as the leaders we believe you to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, speaking on item 5.01, redistricting update, Bess Clark.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, members of the board. I am coming from Old Mill Middle North, and a lot of my students will hopefully be attending the new Old Mill West High School. But I'm speaking for this conversation for a few schools that are on the agenda or the list of schools to be debated for the redistricting. It is alarming the amount of development that's occurred in this area, mainly Meade in the Severn area, Glen Burnie are way over capacity, and that's beside the point. The overwhelming, I've looked at the report from the Anne Arundel County Development impact on school facilities. A lot of that was ignored, and now here we are. We're over capacity in so many schools. The school that is not on the list is Severna Park. I happen to live in the Riverdale community. It is a 21146 zip code. It was redistricted to Chesapeake when Shipley's Choice was a little bit louder, and they didn't want to go to a more ethnically diverse school, that is Old Mill. My neighborhood in Riverdale is 1.2 miles from Severna Park, yet they are asking us to be bused, transported down the peninsula to a bottleneck that is Chesapeake. Luckily enough, my ex-husband lives in Severna Park, and I'm able to transport my children to school and get to my school on time. What I'm afraid of, and this happened in Crofton with the new middle school and the new high school that was built, is that there's going to be voices that are louder, and you're going to further marginalize our students They're not going to get access to the new shiny new school, and they will be continued to be pushed out and shoved out because of people who have more money. The Shipley's Choice was louder. The average income is $178,000. I just want to make it clear that everybody's eyes are on you as you have this conversation. Riverdale should go back to Severna Park so that they are closer to their school. The area, the map, Severna Park's the smallest one. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker on item 5.01 redistricting update is Pramit Patel.
Hi, my name is Pramit Patel. I had a question particularly to redistricting, much like the topic that was just discussed. With regard to both Old Mill and to Severna Park, there's an area off of East-West Road, particularly a few communities of Shipley's Reserve, Shipley's Choice, and Shipley's Preserve that are basically divided up in order to split up between the two schools. However, those children in those communities all work together, play together, socialize together, participate in activities together, and they're divided up between schools, which doesn't make any particular geographic sense. To the point of transportation, there's also a split between how they can travel to school, but particularly with the traffic issues that occur on Veterans Highway going toward Old Mill, and then split between the other time going to Severna Park. My ask is that the board reconsider redistricting lines along those communities in order to have better balance between kids attending both schools, whichever direction it is, particularly their social development going forward.
Thank you. Our next speaker, speaking on 5.01 redistricting update, Tanda Rigard. It looks like she is signed in. Mr. Mosier, is she with us?
Yes, she's muted.
Ms. Rigard, can you unmute, please? Okay, we're going to move forward, and if we can, we'll get back to Ms. Rigard if we can. Our next speaker on 5.01 redistricting update, Jamie King. Okay, I understand Jamie is not with us. Our next speaker, speaking on item 5.03, virtual day instruction plan, Jamie King. Okay, so let's see if we can go back to item 5.01 redistricting update, Tanda Rigard. Tanda, could you please unmute?
Moving
on. Evidently, there were some problems with communication. So we could ask Tanda Rigard if you could send us an email, boardoffice@aacps.org. That's boardoffice@aacps.org. That concludes our virtual testimony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our testimony, public testimony for today. Thank you all who came. So we will move on to item 4.01, President's Report. I simply want to report on a wonderful week and a couple of days now of opening of school visits that I think we all have appreciated, seeing kids back in school for a year that feels a little more normal than I'm on. Oh, sorry. For a year that feels a little bit more normal for a lot of us. So thank you to all the schools that have hosted us so far. And I know Dr. Bedell has been making many, many visits. I also want to thank the communities that have invited us in for various events and discussions and continue to do so around the district. So now that concludes the president's report. We'll move to item 4.02, superintendent's report. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to start off by letting all of our speakers know that it is with deep appreciation that you came in today to speak. I've taken down a ton of notes. As you know, this is my fourth week of this, and just kind of, you know, walking into us trying to restart a school district that's been through a lot over the past couple of years. When you think about what's happening from a staffing standpoint, from transportation, teachers, food services employees, to the new school start times that I know has created a lot of anxiety within the community. And it's good that we listen to this. I said this in the first meeting, board meeting that I was here, that we have to try new things, but we have to be calculated in what we do, because you also have to focus on what type of stress are we putting on the system, what type of stress are we putting on the community. And so over the first week and a half, I've visited roughly about 29 schools. I have been stuck in some of the traffic. I have recognized that we have one way in and one way out in some of these facilities. And so my conversation has been with our team, what can we do to mitigate some of the concerns? And it's not just with the community. With our staff, I am going out and I'm starting to meet with different people in the community. I drove through all of North County yesterday and observed and have a deeper understanding for why we're experiencing some of the issues over there, just as we're experiencing similar issues out in South County or Chesapeake, when it's only one way in on the peninsula and one way out. And what I ask of everybody is, just like the amount of data and collection that was taken into making this decision, I think we owe it to make sure that we pull that same data around the effects that this decision has had on our county as a whole, right? And then to be able to come back and say, here's what we know we can absolutely work on and fix, and here's right now, based on the conditions that we have, it's not fixable. And then we have to make decisions as a community around how do we mitigate some of these concerns. All of this, and I share this with the board, there are three factors that I think has created where we are right now. One, the lack of being able to fully staff our transportation department. So part of your backups that you're having is that instead of 50 kids or 60 kids being on a bus, that now creates 25 more riders in cars, 25 more cars. The congestion just compounds. And then if you're in an area where you might have a middle school in the same complex as the high school, it's virtually impossible, or elementary school in the same complex as the high school, it's virtually impossible for people to get out. So it's impacting people's livelihood, right? So I recognize these things as we're getting emails and as we're looking into it. And I promise you, my job is to work with our team to try to figure out to the best of our ability how we mitigate these issues. I am also pulling data because I think it's important that we look at trend data. So right now, I'm looking at attendance rates at every single school. And we're going to look at attendance rates based on year to date. I've been giving the board an update on attendance rates. And right now, as a county, we are sitting at about 94% on attendance rates. In the future, I will make sure that as we present, we have this data up on a screen, because I think people need to see it. And then we need to be able to talk about, Okay, now let's break it down and look at how is it impacting high schools? How is it impacting middle schools? How is it impacting elementary schools? Where are these areas being impacted? And now we can start to go in and say, okay, is this factors that have already, they occurred before we even did early start? Or are these now factors that are newly created as a result of our inability to fully staff transportation coupled with early start? So we got to look at data. And listen, everybody, it's 7 days. 7 days. I've been a superintendent for 6 years. I never had transportation figured out after a week. I worked in Baltimore County. I worked in the Houston Independent School District. I worked in Nashville Metro Schools, and I worked here. I'm here now. It's going to take a couple of weeks for us to try to figure all of this out so we can give you accurate data. That's the reason why I haven't given the board individual school data yet, because we have no shows that we haven't reconciled with. So those attendance rates may not be accurate, right? They may be higher or they may be lower, but once we're able to reconcile, now we're going to go ahead and we'll put all of this out in the public so you all can see where we are. Our enrollment is up compared to last year at this time, but we haven't scrubbed and taken off no shows, but we're showing almost 85,000 students. So some of the growth is looking like it did pre-pandemic. So we're having this return, but I don't also want us losing people because people can't get their kids to school. So this is some of the things that I know that we will have to work on as we continue to try to mitigate some of these problems. And I am open to taking ideas from you all. We got some good ideas from a group of folks that we met with in South County last night. I will come out and meet with you and listen to you. You've already sent me an email, and some of that stuff we looked into. So I just want you to know, I don't want you to think, I don't want anybody to feel like more of the same. We don't feel like we're being heard, right? It's a massive school district, and we're going to look into addressing these things because we have a good school system, folks. We can't be great, though, if we got all of these little cuts. We can't be great. And our goal is to become a great school district. So it's also making sure that we're listening to our community members and doing our part. Finally, I want to give a shout out to our food and nutrition services team. On Friday, we ran into an unexpected gas leak out on Mountain Road in Pasadena. And we had to shut school down. We had to close out. We couldn't do athletic events. We had to cancel games. But this team of food and nutrition services team, served about 200 Chesapeake High School and Chesapeake Bay Middle School students who remained at the school into dinner hour because they couldn't get out. Right? Once that leak occurred, there's generally one way in and one way out. This is kind of the barriers that we're running into with some of the things that we're trying to do as we're trying to evolve as a school district that we have to work through. We have some barriers that aren't really on the school district, but there are barriers nevertheless that we have to take into account, and they are variables that we have to try to control for to the best of our ability. These folks stayed there and provided dinner, a hot meal for these students. These food nutrition service workers, Sandy Shore and Misty Pelly, went to the middle school, which is not even their regular work location, and they got things ready for students in under an hour. So I just want to thank them for what they've done, and everybody else included. I know I said the last thing, but this is the last thing for real. We will get through this together. We will get through this together. I promise you, we will do this in a very collaborative way, and we will get through this. I just ask that everybody give us opportunities to get the data. There are some routes that didn't run last week that are now running. Because we were able to secure bus drivers, but just as fast as we secure bus drivers, we got other bus drivers quitting. And what I need help from you all, parents and anybody listening, we can't have parents going on the school buses, going at our bus drivers. I get the frustration, but you can't go onto the buses threatening bus drivers because people will quit because they don't have to put up with it. And then we're in a deeper hole. So the frustration directed towards me as the superintendent. But please, Let our bus drivers do their job. They're doing the best that they can under the conditions that they have inherited. And help us find bus drivers if you can. Here's my promise. And I told this to the other community. Help us find them. We will make sure that those bus drivers are solely earmarked for your community. We will not take them and put them somewhere else. That's what I shared with the community last night, and that's what I shared with my team this morning. So we need help. I'm asking for help. And if we can get this done, the wonderful thing that happens in classrooms, the instruction has been phenomenal. Go into the schools and see for yourself. It's been phenomenal. But we got to get them into the schools. So thank you all, and that's the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bedell. Do I see any lights for questions? I will remind members, first round is for questions, second round is for comments. Ms. Schulheim, do you have a question?
Yes. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. I understand that we have a number of bus drivers in the pipeline, and I would like a little bit more understanding about where they are in the pipeline and when we can see them out on routes, assigned to routes.
Yes, Ms. Schulheim, I will have Alex. He will come up, and for potential other questions, we will have Monique Jackson come up to also field some of your questions.
Good afternoon. For the record, Alex Shaknovich. So to Ms. Weaving together Dr. Bedell's comments, Ms. Schulheim, and addressing your question directly, we've got about 55 drivers in the pipeline right now, driver candidates in the pipeline. It is about an 8-week process. But, you know, to Dr. Bedell's, you know, points, this last week, the first week of school, we had 3 drivers that successfully passed and are on the routes. Great news. We had 11 quit. We swam backwards. So we went from being short 67 drivers the week before school to being short 75 right now. So we are actively working with the contractors and with the MVA. The state has made some both testing concessions as well as opened up additional testing opportunities to try to help not just us, but all of the school districts, because us and all of the surrounding counties are similarly situated in terms of the driver shortages. And the end of the path, Ms. Schulheim, really kind of winds up in 3 places, though, right? You've got 55 in the pipeline currently, as I indicated. Of those, some of them fail to make it all the way through for a variety of reasons, right? They either fail or they quit at some point along this, you know, sort of 8-week journey. Of the ones that then finish the 8-week journey and successfully pass, we hope that most of them, but unfortunately not all of them, come to work for us, because many of them will, you know, that license is now a gold card. Amazon's paying is starting at $40 an hour, starting pay. It's more than double what we're paying, you know? So, you know, we are putting people through classes. We pay for them to go through classes, and we do everything possible, obviously, to have them work for us. But not only our existing drivers, but the ones that are newly passing classes have other opportunities. And we have increasingly become a consumer-driven country, and that last mile delivery, people expect, you know, things to land on their doorstep within 24 hours of ordering. And the general commerce, the commercial sector of our country sort of pivoted towards that. And they've got tools that we don't have. They have pricing power, right? If you, the Amazon customers, are demanding enough to get your product within 2 hours or 24 hours, well, guess what? You're actually willing to pay for that. And if Amazon finds that $40 an hour isn't enough to fund their drivers, they're going to charge you a little bit more for that toothpaste and a little bit more for that basketball that you ordered. And they're going to start paying their drivers yet even more, which is going to further disincentivize our own drivers. Dr. Bedell, I appreciate your comments. because, as I said, we lost 11 and only gained 3 in 7 days. We've got to not drive away our own. You know, there's already a lot of economic incentive out there, Ms. Schulheim. I alluded to that just by way of context. But the ones that we have, we got to treat like gold because we need to keep them. They're here for a variety of reasons. Yes, they're making money, but they love kids. You're not going to do this if you hate kids, right? They love kids. Let's treat them like they love kids. Let's treat them like they're part of the families. You see the wonderful pictures of the drivers, and even our bus companies have been doing like supply collections, right, for our schools and giving treats. And they know these kids by name, things like that, right? They're here for a reason that's money, but money plus. And let's recognize them for the good and noble work that they're doing. Do everything we can to keep the ones we have and make it as an attractive place as possible to keep onboarding new drivers and then incentivize them in both kind ways and fiscal ways to keep them here. So I'm sorry that was a long-winded answer, but I think that may also help, you know, sort of undergird some of the discussions that you and your colleagues may be having this afternoon.
I really appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ellis?
Thank you. Yeah, a couple things. And thank you, Mr. Chagnovich, for your comments. You very briefly touched on how other districts compare to ours. Can you enlighten us a little more on that? Because I think that the story in Anne Arundel County is a bit confusing to many, I think. And so I think that's important information that there's this perception that Anne Arundel County is much more understaffed than others.
Certainly. So thank you for the question. Well, I alluded to it just briefly earlier, but I'll sort of elaborate on that, right? We are now for the second year in a row, but actually in a worse shape even than the year before, in a deficit for school bus drivers. And that is across the country, and that is across the state, and clearly, right, the evidence shows locally here. And it's for many of the factors that I alluded to when I was addressing Ms. Schulheim's question. So the most recent data that I saw was data that was collected by MSDE, and it's now about 3 weeks old. So they sent out a survey, but at that time, we had about a 9% vacancy rate in terms of our drivers. Of the large jurisdictions, we were actually fourth. So 3 of the larger jurisdictions had a higher vacancy rate than we did. And the other thing I want to address, Ms. Ellis, is it's not simply a divergence of counties like us that outsource, because some of the counties that self-perform, that have 100% government employees with pensions, with benefits, had higher vacancy rates than we did as well. So there's not that silver bullet that we make them merit employees and all of a sudden they come, you know, flocking, because other jurisdictions that use that other model are similarly struggling. But specifically, you know, Howard County has had, based on the MSD data, Howard County, Baltimore County, Prince George's County, all had higher vacancy rates on a percentage basis, because you have to go by percent.
Correct.
Right? That's the only way to do apples to apples, because their jurisdictions are so much differently sized.
So yes, there are some counties who own their own fleet, employ their drivers, but there's surely other differences between us. So as far as AACPS employed drivers, how large of a deficit do we have there?
I think we are only down about 2.
Yeah.
And we were fully staffed heading into the summer. We had, I believe, 7 leave us. We've brought on 5, so I think we're in deficit of 2. But just like our contractors, We also have other folks that are not frontline drivers. So we've been able to press into service, and our contractors do the same. They've got mechanics, they've got mid-level managers, they've got dispatchers. You know, right now it's an all hands on deck situation, and everybody they can have, or everyone we have, is out on the road driving buses. So we currently have those 2 vacancies, but we are able to cover them. So we've got 55 of our own routes that we self-perform, and we were able to fully cover our 55 routes by redeploying our own resources. Overall, and I know I'm extending your question, but let me just, you know, get it on the record basically. So we have, as of today, we did not have 81 drivers. Okay. We did not have 81 drivers. 75 of those 81 were because there isn't a driver. The 6 others were attributable to call outs. So somebody got sick, somebody's got COVID, somebody's got something going on. So of the original 81, 75 were no drivers. 6 of them are call outs. We had 64 routes not covered because of that potential of 81,
Right.
the contractors, using the same techniques that I just alluded to, the contractors were able to cover 17 of those, leaving the balance of the 64 that were not run this morning. Again, it's strategies such as, you know, using any and everybody that you have on your team that's eligible, combining routes wherever feasible. We've been in a process of onboarding the van program, and as more of those come online, we'll be able to leverage those resources a little bit better. So using a variety of methods, including onboarding new drivers clearly, and hopefully retaining the ones we have, you know, that's the path to incrementally begin bringing down those vacancy numbers and those uncovered numbers.
Thank you for expanding and making that clear. And then finally, the question that we get a lot is how it is determined what routes are going to be vacant and which one. How are we prioritizing? And I have 2 particular issues. Obviously, the communities that are probably more disadvantaged in a number of ways economically. It can be easily stated that it's more of a hardship for them to have options to get their kids to school. And then the other is, and this one's a little more touchy, is our magnet schools. Obviously, a magnet program is a program of choice, but it's a program we offer, and and that becomes that student's school. And so those parents now have to take their child across the county, perhaps, which could be the you know, if they live in West County and they're going to Brooklyn Park Middle School for PVA and they work in DC. I mean, so how are we prioritizing to try and minimize the hardship?
Sure. So let me take the first crack at that question, and I'm sure Dr. Bedell and Ms. Jackson may weigh in as well. So it's a little bit like a multivariable calculus problem, right? It's just simply not that easy. One of the things we heard from this board last year, heading into this year, wanted us to take into account the degree to which routes were not run last year.
Yeah.
So one of the very, you know, and this is my words, not this board's words, but essentially try to spread or move the pain around, right? So it's not that exact group from last year is heavily impacted this year. So certainly we're looking at last year's data to inform this year's data. That's a piece of it. Certainly we do take into account factors like, you know, their Title I status. We take into account if you have an asset, and an asset can hold X amount of children, do you deploy that one asset to pick up 11 youngsters, or you deploy that one asset to potentially pick up 46 youngsters, right? So we're taking a look at things like that. The one limiting factor we have is, as you recall, and we've covered this many times last year, Ms. Ellis, was that we do publicly, bid and award these routes. And we've got, 16 different operators out there that are managing, their staff, their fleets, their contracted routes. Some of them are quite honestly better staffed or higher staffed. Some of them not as well, right? And we do not have the luxury of unilaterally going into my fictitious example. I can't walk into company C and direct company C to send his employee over to go work for company A, right? And I'm using that as an example that there basically are some guardrails on the solution set. And so within each one of these 16, the operators, right? So as either vacancies occur or as drivers come on board, those are the things we're looking at, right? We're looking at trying to not as heavily impact the ones who were as heavily impacted last year, taking a look at Title I potentials, taking a look at riderships, again, that euphemism of where do you get the most bang for your buck, right? If you only have one, where do you optimize the deployment of that? And there are other factors, but, I'm sort of giving you a picture. So it's not, and the last thing I'll say is it's a little bit of a moving target. And I think Dr. Bedell said, data. We're collecting the data each and every day. So we know which routes are not covered. We know where we've lost a driver. We know where we've added a driver and we're still in a process of combining routes and doing other things. So I think once we get that data stabilized, right, and we're kind of into a more steady state piece of this journey, then I think we'll also much more effectively be able to make data-driven decisions on where to apply the next incremental driver or the next asset. I don't know if Ms. Jackson or Dr. Bedell wanted to extend that any further.
Okay, and I don't have any more questions, except you said something that I feel like needs to be cleared up. You can't take from company A to drive for company C, but if we get to a point where company C is not performing on a route and company A can, that can be dealt with through contract, correct?
Yes, ma'am, 100%. And we did that last year, and we're fully prepared to do that this year. All the contractors clearly understand that. Within every contract, a contract has a series of remedies, right? It's like Ms. Jackson deals in a world of progressive discipline, whether it's progressive discipline for a student or an employee, unfortunately, right? Well, embedded within each and every contract, there is a series, it's like progressive discipline, but there are steps that we can take contractually, and absolutely taking away and reassigning the work, 100%. We did it last year, and we have no qualms about doing that this year, with one caveat. If you take the work away from fictitious company A, you have to have a home for it, right? You have to have another company that is prepared to service that route and service it consistently. But 100%, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Schalheim, you still have a light. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to ask about a couple little other, well, no, not little, other things related to transportation. So it's my understanding that we still pay the training, the CDL training, but then there could be Amazon rep standing outside the boundary of the MVA waiting to poach that person that just passed their test. Are there any safeguards to ensuring that if we're paying for the training that driver then comes and drives for us?
Very good question, Ms. Schalheim. And the answer is no. And the answer is no on purpose. We've gone down that route before. It's a disincentive to folks even applying to become candidates. So we have explored basically like work requirements. Like, okay, if you come to this class and you pass, you are committed to work for us for a certain amount of time. And if not, we're going to put a lien against your house. you can't really do that. I'm making that up,
Right.
right? But so if you create a construct at the beginning that there is a potential penalty on the backside, it de-incentivizes folks. There are other entities out here, both public and private, that are training drivers, CDL drivers. The Anne Arundel Community College has a very robust program to train CDL drivers. We partner with the community college. They're tremendous allies. We partner with them to get CDL drivers through the program. Some of their drivers go on to work in commercial trucking. Some of their drivers go on to work in the school bus industry. If at the beginning of the class, one of the instructors or I or somebody from transportation says, and however, if you go down the school bus route, there's going to be penalties if you don't come to work for me eventually. The ones that were sitting over to the half the room that was school bus oriented, they're going to get out of their chairs and they're going to walk to the other one. Because remember, the other one's already more lucrative financially.
Right.
And the more I'm heavy-handed about things, the less likely to work. They're likely to come work for me. So the answer is yes, we try various means, but you got to be careful because sometimes the downside outweighs the upside. And that's sort of a moving target. We are also, and again, maybe I'm showing my age a little bit, but the workforce of today is not the workforce that we had maybe when I started work, right? Folks are more fluid. They feel they have more options. They feel that, maybe because of some of the labor shortages, employees actually have gained a little bit of power, right? And so some of the dynamics between the employer, employee, or, corporate versus private, some of those dynamics are changing right before our very eyes. We have to change along with that. We're learning and trying different things. And it's almost like that scientific method, right? We've got a hypothesis, we deploy it, we watch it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, we have two options. It doesn't work, we either try to adjust it, redeploy it again, or if it's really not working, you got to get off that highway, as quickly as possible, right? You learned that in MBA
No pun
school
intended.
too.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yes, we're looking at a lot of those things, but we got to tread carefully because we don't want to be in a worse end state condition than we are at present.
Understood. Thank you for that clarity around that. Just two more really quick questions. And this is just thinking outside the box. This is not my idea. This idea came to me, but I think it's great, and I just wanted to put it out in the universe. If there's workforces that have more of a flexible is not the right word, but don't have like a consistent 9 to 5, 5-day a week hours that also have CDLs. I don't know, maybe like firefighters or something like that. If reaching out to those bodies and saying, hey, can you between two people who might have a stretch of time, off days in the week, can together mutually cover a route, or at least most of the time. I don't know if we're reaching out to those sorts of bodies or not. Just an idea to put into the universe.
Certainly. Again, good question. So the answer to that is yes. And actually the state, DMV, has sent out, because they've got the list of everybody who holds a piece of plastic in their wallet that says CDL on it. So actually the governor's office and MVA has been doing a lot of that. That's one piece. Secondly, we work with our economic development and Anne Arundel Workforce Development office here. They have been doing a tremendous amount of that as well. The one thing is not all CDLs are the same.
Yeah, the passenger endorsement.
Right. You have to, you have to have a school bus endorsement. You have to have a passenger endorsement. And most of our buses now have an air brake system on them as opposed to a hydraulic, the old fashioned mechanical or hydraulic system, which requires yet another specialized endorsement onto your license. So not all CDL drivers are minted the same, and you would have to have an individual, for example, volunteer fireman for a long time drove engines, right? I couldn't drive a school bus. I would have to go back to training and get those additional, go through training and go through tests to get those additional endorsements added to the license that I used to hold to drive fire engines at 80 miles an hour around the town. So,
But just a thought, if there's
Mhm.
anyone out there that
yeah.
that wants to add some endorsements to their CDL, holler
And
at
it's-
us.
And it's
please.
actually a very, the good thing with
Yeah.
that is I mentioned like an 8-week timeline.
Yeah.
They've already done the hard part.
Yeah.
So now it's just a couple little add-ons. So we would be highly receptive to anybody like that. Like I said, the state is trying to advocate for that. Workforce development is trying to advocate people to stretch their existing licenses a little bit to get those additional endorsements.
It's a
So we are
great-
knocking on those doors.
A great job, Ray, for filling. Good kids. That's my plug. Lastly, I just want to piggyback on something that was said earlier that we're, in terms of prioritizing routes. One more thing you might want to consider is distance to school. Like, if we have a route that's run because
Yep.
Arundel Beach Road is the Autobahn, but under proper adult supervision, i.e. someone walking with their kids to school, could be doable, might allow a bus run, say, in Lower Magathie to run where it's not at all walkable. I'm
Yep.
just using my community as an example.
Yeah, no,
Just
great.
something to
And
consider.
and you're right, right? So, I mean, again, to Miss Ellis's question, I said sort of like multivariable calculus. That is a variable we should be considering. Absolutely. Specific to that zone, I wish they'd built those sidewalks already. There wouldn't be any buses going there.
I
They'd
know,
all be
County,
walkers.
you approved it from Kennedy to Folger.
We just need a county to come through for
Let's
us.
do it. That should have happened years ago. So anyway, thank you, and I just want to show my support and my gratitude for being and then again in an impossible situation, but if there's anything I as a board member or subsequently we as a board can discuss and help resolve, I know that recommendations will come to us, and I'm all ears. And thank you.
I will take one pretty cool thing that we're doing with workforce development is, as you know, we're also short of food service workers and we're short of
wasn't even on.
custodians. And both us, our human resources department, as well as workforce development has been aggressively marketing our positions to existing school bus drivers and school bus attendants. Because the schedules, not always, but in some cases, the schedules work out such that you can drive a bus in the morning, go work for Miss Rissy for food services in the middle, and go back and run a bus in the afternoon. That's option A. Or you can work your bus routes AM or PM, and then you can go work for our operations division. We have both 4 and 8 hour positions. You can go work for operations in the PM. And what that does is it makes that school bus driver position or school bus aid attendant, whatever you want to call them, a more viable, because you can make you can actually make more money, right? Because you're working more hours, you make more money, you could potentially become eligible for our benefits, right? Maybe better than the private sector. So we are actually aggressively reaching out to the private sector to see if we can pair up. Because you reference a firefighter driving a bus. We're also trying to get bus drivers to work for food services or operations to increase their pay and increase their benefits as well. So we're working that candle on both ends.
That's an amazing point. I noticed that I did not have. I don't know how long I didn't have my mic on. So just for the
I
folks
think
listening,
it was just briefly.
It was just briefly. Okay. So just for the folks listening, I asked about a couple. I asked about the paying to train. I asked about routing buses that are further afield as one of the many considerations versus the ones that are close in. And I love the idea about about having bus drivers than go work for Miss Rissy. She's amazing, and we need food and nutrition staff up and down the county. So please and thank you, and make some good money, make some amazing friendships, relationships with our kids, and maybe even some benefits. Our benefits package is amazing. There's my plug. All right, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a couple of quick questions. First of all, a huge thank you. A couple of very critical routes, I believe, have now been covered in the Annapolis area. And those were for students who had few options. So I know incredible work has continued to happen in these first 7 days. So thank you. Also, I wanted to ask Dr. Bedell, Mr. Sheknovich, I believe there are communications with the city with regard to helping with city transport as an added support for Annapolis students.
Yeah, terrific. So yes, just like last year, you remember once we identified sort of where those gaps were, because that's the first piece, right? You got to lead with data. So we now have a better handle on where our coverage gaps are. We have met with both the county and the city twice now to basically overlay their route structure on top of our gap structure. So I think we're pretty close to those details. Both the county and the city would waive fees for our students. They did that last year. They're amenable to waiving the fees for our youngsters as well. So the plan is, and I think we're really close to getting that work done. The plan would be we would partner then with Mr. Mosier's group in communications, and we would put that information up on our website. So families could easily access what potential municipal routes or county routes, either the city or the county, what of their assets could be used to supplement our own resources. So I think we're pretty close to right there. I think there's just a couple finishing touches on that. I will say it's a little bit more challenging this year than last year, really just for one reason. When we first faced this last year, both the city and the county had lower ridership levels because we had not maybe as fully emerged out of the pandemic structure, and because there was a higher work from home prevalence, right, 12 months ago than there is now. So their ridership numbers are up a little higher, and they've got constituents they need to serve too. And we got to be mindful that there's a balance, right? They don't work for the school district. They work for all of the citizens of the city and all of the citizens of the county. But where they can help us and where their resources overlap and where we can plug coverage gaps, partnering with them, they're all in. They are terrific partners with us, and they will do everything they can to help us, right, within the constraints that they also face. They also have labor shortages, just like we do currently.
Did you want to add, Dr.
Yeah, I just want to publicly thank Mayor Buckley, because as soon as we made the phone call, he was like, get my people connected with your people. Let's make it happen. There was no hesitation whatsoever. And that's the type of partnerships that we're looking for with our elected officials to kind of help us through this, rather than we don't need to be at odds with each other. And I think there's a lot of that going on. We just have to work together. And I said that earlier today, we just all have to work together to work through this. So I do want to publicly acknowledge his willingness to want to help support the district through this matter.
And Madam President, Mr. Pittman reached out as well from the county side similarly, and green-lighted his staff. And that really was that activation energy, was the two elected officials basically green-lighting the project, and then it's just, rolled at a fast pace from there.
Well, I'm grateful to them, both to County Executive Pittman and Mayor Buckley, and to you and Dr. Bedell for being the partners that I know we want to be in every case. And I will put in one small plug, because we appreciate everything the county and the city are doing for us right now. But someday it would be wonderful to have a bus stop right in front of Annapolis High School, because there are a lot of people who get jobs there and all the rest of it, where that would be great. So
Okay, can I put in one more plug?
please do.
This county is underserviced with public and municipal transit to this is Alex now. This isn't company guy talking anymore. But we are underserviced with public and mass transit to almost an embarrassing level compared to the resources that we have in this county.
Yes.
Because truly, it's really only and this is part of the problem, Madam President. It's really the city of Annapolis and the northern part of the county, say the Glen Burnie region or whatever, right? So many parts of our county don't have any service at all, that the opportunities where we're looking at to do that Venn diagram thing of where do our gaps, that's not even a possibility somewhere. So long-term, this isn't a today issue, but at some point in time, this county needs to wrestle a little bit more with that. The county council just passed a Move Anne Arundel plan. It's actually a requirement of the state and it's a requirement of the federal government. We passed that. That plan identifies where our public transit gaps are and opportunities where we can encourage more walking, sidewalks, where we can encourage more bike ridership by having safe bike lanes, and where we can have more municipal or public transit options to not just help get our kids to school, but get people to work and get people to wherever they need to go, be it the grocery store, the doctor's office, or whatever. So it's a very good report. It's the Move Anne Arundel report. The county council adopted it. And I would encourage you and particularly the viewing audience to take a look at that and become engaged in what's happening around them.
I that's a point well taken. And I would say that it's, we're working hard as a school system to get our transportation where we need it to be, but we have always been under the gun because probably the most reliable public transportation anybody in this county's ever had, in my memory, has been school buses. And there are no backups for most people. So I think that is something worth considering as a part of the package that you're talking about, Mr. Shegnovich. I'm sorry, Ms. Corkadal, I didn't see your button before I started speaking, so please go ahead.
Thank you so very much. So I just wondered, and I am some of the anxiety I think that we heard from some folks surrounds of my child being late to school. My child ended up missing school and I can't commute back from Northern Virginia back over because the bus was missed. Or when we get in early dismissal environments from time to time, what does that look like? So I know that we are handling this with grace and compassion, each and every single school, and our administrators and our teachers are working hard to make sure that they're caught up, that they're included. If they miss that first day of interaction and bonding, that there are many opportunities daily in the classroom to reestablish that. But could you go over just a little bit of a couple strategies and what if, because we will experience, due to health, due to other things, new outages as we clear these. That will remain constant, I believe, regrettable as it is. But I think it would be helpful to for the parents to get a feel for what that looks like and that it is okay. It's not okay that they're missing the education, but that overall we do have the structure to make sure that they're getting through.
Thank you so much. If it's okay with the team, I'll take this question. For the record, Monique Jackson, Deputy Superintendent for Student and School Support. And I smile when you ask that question, not because our families are experiencing turmoil, but because our school-based administrators and staff will do whatever it takes to make sure that our students have the education that they deserve. And what I mean by that is our Chesapeake cluster on Friday proved that. I was in the school security office with members of our leadership team, and we watched the staff and interacted with the staff via phone throughout the evening, probably at least until 6:45. And so that's just one example of the fact that our administrators and our school-based staff will do whatever it takes. So I want to start with that. Then I want to talk about what we have at every single school. And so at the secondary level, the schedule itself supports this type of unfortunate situation. And so we do have, and I'll talk about what I know best, Bulldog Block, we have Seahawk Hour, we have Wildcat Hour, we have all of those things in place so that our students can get extra support, they can have pre-teaching, reteaching, and all of those things already built into the school day so that it does not detract from their after-school activities, because many of them have sports, they have drama, theater, dance, and many of them have to work. So that's the secondary level. It also exists in the elementary level as we have differentiated instruction at the elementary level. And so again, built into the academic day, we have an opportunity for students to have reteaching, pre-teaching, and extension if needed. So that takes care of the first two things. We also have a network of support within the school day, especially at the secondary level, so that if students need that support, we will continue to, and then you have those people that, a student may not be able to name. A student can say, my teacher is, my cafeteria manager is, my principal is, but they may not be able to say my PPW is, or my social worker is, or my psychologist. But we also have that group of student support team available to help in the event that a student needs some additional support. So they should not be penalized. If they are, or if there is ever any question or a comment or a need for support from a student or a community member, we ask that you start with the school principal and have that interaction, have that conversation with the school principal so that they are aware of the issue. And again, if that school principal is not able to resolve that issue, we ask that you reach out to the regional assistant superintendent, and then from there.
Just as a follow-up, so that information is on our website when you go
Absolutely.
and you look up your school, and not only do you have the principal and the assistant principals, but you also have the regional superintendent. Because a lot of times people are like, well, I tried that conversation. So it is there. You just have to scroll down a little bit. There was one other concern, and I just wanted to alleviate it because I think it's a perception.
Yes.
And that is, of course, we serve breakfast.
Yes, ma'am.
Breakfast is an option for all students,
Yes.
and for quite a few of our students, that is an essential meal for them in our free and reduced meal program. We do have some buses that are showing up late, and because of carpools and stuff. Could you just go over, because I think parents have a perception that now they're not eating their meal, and I was actually kind of curious of how we work through that. If you could explain it, because once I heard it, I was relieved a little bit, not the fact that they're showing up late and having to multitask, but that we do have a plan in place for that.
Absolutely. So let's be clear. I was a principal 10 to 12 years ago, and late buses are not a new thing. And so as a principal of Annapolis Middle School, I was dealing with late buses. And so we make provisions for those students. We write passes to make sure that they get to their class. Sometimes, especially at our students, at our schools where they have full school breakfast program, they're eating right there in their classroom. And so those things are typically not issues. And again, going back to your earlier question, this has not been the first school year where we have students who've had some chronic attendance issues. And we do work with those students, no matter what the issue is, right? To make sure that they are accessing their education. And so if there is a concern, and I know people are maybe a little bit shy about reaching out to the principal, but please reach out to the principal and let them know, because as I've said in front of this body many times before, we can only fix that which we know about.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. And just, I know the people I've had a chance to speak with, I'm literally on the phone trying to reach out on the personal level wherever I can.
And that's a good point,
it-
Ms.
it's a-
Corkadell, because reaching out to the school principal is the best way.
Yeah.
And I love social media. It's great in so many ways, but posting your disdain or something or a particular situation on Facebook or whatever social media platform may not get it to the appropriate person. And so the best way is to put your child's school in your phone, save it, and call that school administrator so that they know.
Yeah, in other words, we know we're busy, and I hear that, but I didn't want to because I thought they were too busy or they wouldn't get back to me. Or one occasion 2 years ago, I did not get a return call, and I encourage, and now we're in public forum, I would say definitely that is not the case. We do need to hear, transportation needs to hear if there's a transportation issue. The school needs to hear if there's academic impact. That's the only way we can help and better understand. We just talked about data and what data is going to do to help us improve our system and our infrastructure. And we need that data. And so you're not hindering someone, you're not bothering them, you're actually helping advocate for your student. And that's where we want them to be, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much. No more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Corkadell. One last thing I would just add, and this is based on some of the testimony we received. And this is not the first time. I think most of us have heard this. Much of what we put out obviously is on our website. And we heard earlier that there are those for whom constant and in some cases any, but at the very least constant and reliable internet access is simply not a factor of life. At the very least, you're working on a phone, you may be working on a phone with very limited data. So I would hope as we continue to wrestle with these issues, we think about how to address that so that we make sure that mode of delivery does not in any unintended way exclude people who perhaps are those who most need to access that information.
Madam
Dr.
Chair,
Bell,
yes,
yeah.
we absolutely will look into that. I accept that criticism.
Not a criticism, just an attempt to make it better. Yes.
He was talking about from the speaker because I think that's true. We have to look at various modalities of communication.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you both. So we will move to the policy committee report. Oh, sorry, Ms. Frank, apologies. Now, discussion. Ms. Frank.
You said I could jump in and if we forgot.
Yeah.
No, I did absolutely want to just say a couple words. Dr. Bedell, thank you. Representing the Chesapeake cluster, you got to see some of the more interesting problems inherent on Friday. So I absolutely wanted to thank you and Mr. Mosier for all of your help getting folks communications, buses, food, everything that had to go into servicing that community in a difficult time early in the year already. So I wanted to thank you. I also wanted to thank our food and nutrition services. Dr. Bedell and I had the opportunity to go to Northeast and taste some of the cuisine. And though I was kicked off of the table for being a CHS graduate, the lunch was still lovely. So I'm really appreciative. I ate the food. I appreciated the people that made sure that our kids had food when they needed it. So I'm really thankful to our food and nutrition services folks this week. I also really want to thank my community, all of the people who stepped up to grab kids and other people's kids. Somebody sent me a picture of a boat taxi because we are a peninsula and some of our communities are water-based communities. So we had boats running kids to their homes and golf carts because they could go in the grass next to the road. So it was a phenomenal effort. We were locked down for about 8.5 hours. It was not fun. But I really appreciate all of the many people who went in to help with this. Pasadena, specifically the Mountain Road cluster or the schools down Mountain Road have unique challenges that will have to be addressed. And as we have the discussions on start times, I've seen many emails from communities with concerns. Obviously, I'm most familiar with my own community, and many of the roads and routes in my district do not have sidewalks in many areas. We do not have shoulders, and we have sidewalks that end abruptly. We have crossing signals or lights without crossing signals, and it's not a very pedestrian-minded area. I think what happened Friday is a timely reminder of the unique circumstances of Peninsula living, and a sort of an old infrastructure. Many of the concerns, moving into transportation comments, many of the concerns that were brought up by this board in June of 2021 and were reviewed and assuaged by our consultant seem to have taken fruition. Specifically, some of the concerns about young students at bus stops early in the morning, standing at stops in the dark. We heard throughout the process that students would not be standing in the dark, that constituents didn't want students in the dark. So when we discussed that with our consultant, that was something that this board brought to attention. And I want to keep that concern at the forefront of all of these conversations, because that is the reality of what we have from the work of the consultant. And I have a lot of concerns. I just want the community to know that I have already requested data to understand how our consultant was unable to deliver on these promises. I've requested that from Dr. Bedell. He has graciously promised that he will take a look and deliver some data points and review all of this, and give reports to the board on that. And I will continue to follow up on those concerns. And I am very appreciative of all of the staff working through all of the many issues that the community and board members have brought to their attention. It's been more emails I think I've seen in the last 2 or 3 weeks than any other issue. And it is an incredible time to join us, Dr. Bedell, and I am thankful for your patience in all of this. And I really do appreciate the tone that you have set going into this, that there are a lot of problems, that we're going to do our best, and we're going to understand what the problems are, and we're going to tackle them. And I appreciate that.
I do want to say thank you to the community because of everything that we've been dealing with. And I know there's a lot of frustration, but the community has stepped up. Many folks are getting their kids to school, and it's evident when you look at the attendance rates, despite us not having a number of routes that are running. So that example that you just provided of this whatever it take mentality, it's highly appreciative from my standpoint. And we have a upcoming meeting where we will meet with Prismatic, I think sometime next week, and we'll talk about some of the concerns that have been raised around, some of the data pieces that board members have been inquiring on based on previous meetings. And we'll have some folks from our team on that call, along with a couple of board members.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I will add my thanks to the entire community for patience, grace, and getting kids to school. It's been a challenge, but people have stepped up, and it's been remarkable to see the commitment. And thank you, Dr. Bedell, for taking on all of this as you jump into our county. Okay. I see no more lights. Has everyone had an opportunity? Okay, thank you. So item 4.03, Policy Committee Report. I should say, unfortunately, our colleague, Ms. Dent, was not able to be with us today due to a family situation she had to attend to. And as a result, she also was not able to attend the Policy Committee meeting yesterday, of which she is chair. So I stepped in, and I will deliver a very brief report. The Policy Committee met yesterday at 3 o'clock. We reviewed Policy AF, non-discrimination, which we voted out of committee, and that will be coming before us in the next couple of weeks. We reviewed Policy BAF, ethics and conflict of interest, which, as members may recall, had been previously voted back to committee. Um, We voted on some minor changes, but the fact that Ms. Dent could not be there, we felt we needed to hold that. We also reviewed policy JB, compulsory attendance, which needed only some technical edits, and our policy on policy making allows for that to happen without having to bring it before the entire board. The next policy meeting will occur on Monday, October 3rd at 3 p.m. And as with all our committee meetings, that will be virtual. So that's the policy report. Item 4.04, the PTA report. Thank you for your patience.
Hello, good afternoon, President Tobin, Vice President Silkworth, Dr. Bedell, and board members and guests. My name is Tamara Beeger. I'm Vice President of the Anne Arundel County Council of PTAs. And I'd like to welcome Dr. Bedell to ACPS and Mr. McGrath also to the Board of Education. We're looking forward to working with you this year and in the future. First, I would like to say welcome back to all of our teachers, administrators, bus drivers, all of our building staff. We hope that the 2022-2023 school year is a great year filled with fun, academic success, and lots of new friends. ACC PTA and our local PTAs are committed to supporting you all through this year in any way that we can. Please also consider supporting your local PTA by joining the school year, and remember that there is no T in PTA. There's no T in PTA without you. I also challenge each of our school board members to please join a local PTA and show your support. For the 2022-2023 school year, ACC PTA is committed to advocating for our students, our staff members, and all of our school community. We will do this by finding ways to take appropriate action and give support to issues that are important to our families throughout our county. We are committed to help find ways to ease the struggle with transportation issues, with staff shortages, and as always, closing the opportunity gaps in and outside of our schools. Our first ACC PTA meeting of the year will be this Monday, September 12th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. This meeting will be held virtually. We will be discussing compliance, membership, and ways to be supportive in our communities. Future training dates will also be announced during our meeting, and we encourage all of our local PTAs to please attend training. Nominations are still being accepted for an AACC PTA secretary, and more information with links to our application can be found on our website and on our Facebook page. And our website is aaccpta.org. So getting to exciting news, ACC PTA is excited for the 2022-2023 National PTA Reflections Program. The Reflections Program is an arts program for students in grades pre-K to 12th, and the arts categories include dance, choreography, film production, photography, music composition, literature, visual arts, and special artist. Student artists compete at the local, county, state, and at the national level. AACC PTA's deadline for local PTA submissions is December 16th, 2022. And to learn more about the program, you can visit the Reflections page that is on pta.org or on the Free State PTA page at fspta.org. And we're hoping to see some of our returning artists and some new artists as well. And I would like to close by saying that we are proud of our local PTAs for persevering over the last 2 years. Please let us know how we can support your PTA by contacting us via our website at www.aaccpta.org. We know this school year presents new challenges, and we are all feeling the impacts. Our school staff, our central office, our bus drivers, our families, but most importantly, our students. And we need to stay positive, have grace and patience, as been said many, many times, and to work with our board and ACPS to find solutions. In the end, we want our children to succeed. As Dr. Bedell stated, for this to happen, we need to work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Beeger, and thank you to the PTA. I will say two things. One, it was my pleasure and honor to attend the Reflections ceremony last winter, I think it was, and it was delightful. So I really recommend to anyone who hasn't been a part of this that to see the students' work is incredible. And also, I am once and always a member of the Annapolis High PTSA, once a Panther parent, always a Panther parent. So thank you. All right, that moves us to the section on presentations. Item 5.01, redistricting update. Dr. Bedell.
All right, I think we're ready to present on this item. We have a couple of staff members coming up. I know Alex. I don't necessarily know this new gentleman here, so you may have to introduce yourself for the record, but
We'll do both. Good afternoon, Alex Sheknova, Chief Operating Officer.
Kyle Roof, Supervisor of Planning, Design, and Construction.
And thank you for the opportunity for us to present item 5.01. It's an information only item today regarding an update for redistricting. As you know, and we'll go into this a little bit deeper, but as you know, Anne Arundel County Public Schools currently has under construction a new West County Elementary School, as well as the Old Mill West High School. Those schools are scheduled to open in the 2024-2025 year, and clearly school boundary and attendance zones will need to be created for those two brand new schools. But the school district is also in the midst of discharging or building out the entirety of the Old Mill Master Plan that we'll cover here today as well. Those two schools, as well as the reconstruction of those other schools, are also going to create some capacity opportunities that we want to be able to utilize, and provides us with an opportunity to comprehensively revisit the attendance and boundary zones to better balance the utilization of schools within the Arundel, Chesapeake, Glen Burnie, Meade, North County, Northeast, and Old Mill feeder districts. And so that's the purpose of the overview today. So as a foundation for that, let me allow Mr. Ruff to go through the school opening timeline, talk about our partners in the process, and where we've gotten to date. And then I will pick that up and carry the conversation between now to the balance of this process.
So as Alex mentioned, there's multiple planning, design, and construction projects currently underway in the 7 feeders. These projects provide additional capacity and programmatic space to the schools within the county experiencing higher utilizations. The most consequential projects, as Alex mentioned, are West County Elementary School and those associated with the Old Mill Master Plan. Using the current construction and funding timelines, 10 of those projects are scheduled to be completed by the 27-28 school year. I'll break those down by year. School year 23 through 24, Quarterfield Elementary School and Rippling Wood replacement projects will be complete. In school year 24-25, the new West County Elementary School will be complete. In addition, we will also be completing Park Elementary School's addition project, which will be shown on the CIP. Old Mill Middle School South replacement will be completed, and the new Old Mill West High School will also be completed. Finally, in the year 24-25, we will be finishing up the Meade High School phased renovation addition project. In school year 26-27, Cat North replacement will be completed, as well as Old Mill Middle North. In 27-28, the final project, Old Mill High School replacement project, will be completed. Together, these projects represent a substantial investment in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. To assist in this redistricting effort, the Board of Education awarded a contract to WXY Architecture and Urban Design in December of 2021. WXY is a multidisciplinary firm based out of New York City and Washington, D.C. that specializes in school planning and spatial analysis. WXY's scope of work also includes public outreach, services provided by Public Engagement Associates, PEA. The two firms have a collaborative relationship and have partnered on a number of projects, including school redistricting efforts in Prince George's County Public Schools and Montgomery County Public Schools. To date, XYZ or WXY has reviewed school enrollment data and is finalizing redistricting scenarios for elementary, middle, and high school students in those 7 feeders. These scenarios take into consideration planned residential developments, utilization rates, existing school boundaries, matriculation patterns, and school construction schedules. WXY is also developing a website that includes mapping tools that will allow the public to view the various redistricting scenarios.
So that provides the highlights of the work that's been done heretofore to get us here today. So what's the roadmap look like going forward? So today is essentially the initial outreach, both to you as the board. Of course, you are already cognizant that you approved a contract for this endeavor, but we're here today because in accordance with our policy and regulation, which is JAA, we customarily commence the redistricting process in September. Ergo, this meeting for the 7th of September. It provides the board notice, provides the public notice that we're kicking off this. The work product that WXY has been working with, along with the public engagement firm PEA, is going to be put up on a website. Again, it's an interactive tool, publicly available. That is being coordinated with Mr. Mosier in our communications office. Not only is that information going to be put up on a website, but we are going to begin a public information campaign. So included in that is not just the principals of the affected schools and key constituencies, for example, elected officials, but really using that multiple channel modality that Dr. Bedell referenced earlier to make sure that we get the word out to all of our public so that they're aware of what we're embarking on, what the resources are, where to be able to find them, how to utilize them, et cetera. And finally, a lot of the conversations have gone around making sure that those products are also available to individuals whose English is not the primary or first chosen language. So we want to, again, make this accessible to as broad an audience as possible. So that's the work early September. We're sitting here right now. We're about ready to launch that piece of it. Where do we go from here? Next step, mid-September. Board members, pay attention. This is going to get important for you in a second. So we very purposely, and I know we had a policy outreach or a briefing earlier. Ms. Ellis was an active participant in actually the comprehensive reanalysis and rewrite of our redistricting policy and regulations that were published in February. And knowing that we had this large project coming forward, and knowing that there were some pros and cons of the way we used to do things previously, that we couldn't maybe approach this very large scale new project in the way that we had done some of the more micro or targeted areas, right? And so we have essentially taken a little bit of a different approach to that. And we're proposing to utilize your citizen advisory committee. They are individuals who you have pre-screened and vetted. They have gone through an application process. They have gone through a public vote and scrutiny process. They are invested in their communities. As you know, they have representation of both the elementary school as well as secondary school level as well. And they have a more robust understanding of the district. And I'm saying this in a very nice way, right? They're very ingrained. They participate in policy committee. They participate in projects that you assign to them. They participate in these meetings. They participate in their communities. So they are good champions of the school district, but they're also dialed into the school district and have, I think, some of that initial institutional knowledge that's going to be able to better position them to be active participants, to be trusted agents, and to be a good intermediary during the process. So how does this look then, right? So we have 7 clusters that are going to be impacted. Each one of those feeder patterns have 2 CAC members, right? There's going to be 14. So mid-September, we're going to bring together the first meeting of the Citizen Advisory Committee relative to redistricting. We're going to bring the 14 members together, and they're going to receive an overview from AACPS staff and our consultants, so WXY and PEA. We're going to give them an overview, begin in-servicing them on all the material that they're going to need to be able to be conversant in, right? We're going to discuss things like how are we best going to conduct listening sessions? How are we best going to be able to conduct public hearings? How do we best get the most public feedback possible? Again, your CAC members have their ear to the ground, right? They know their communities. We need to learn from them, right, on how to do that better. The consultants clearly have done this in many jurisdictions. They bring a wealth of knowledge to the table. Our own staff has done this many times. We bring some wealth of knowledge, but we got to get that community voice in here too, right? And that's part of what we need the CAC for as well. The committee meetings are going to be made available to the public. They're going to be made available for viewing only. This is going to be a business meeting. Okay, I'm going to get to the public outreach in a second. So the first meeting of the committee, they need time to get organized. They need time to get upschooled. They need to have organizational things, right? They're going to have to pick a chair, you know, amongst the committee. So they're going to have a little bit of work to do too. So we're envisioning that that meeting, as with all meetings, are going to be publicly accessible, publicly viewable, but that is going to be a business meeting. Okay. We're then in late September going to embark on some public listening sessions. One within our proposal is one in each of the 7 clusters. So we're going to start there. Public listening sessions, late September, probably into very early October, into 7 clusters. Where we're going to invite parents and other community stakeholders, all stakeholders. Again, this is going to be carefully choreographed and coordinated through Mr. Mosier. He and his communications team, again, informed by some of the best practices that we will pick up from WXY and PEA, PEA is a subconsultant. Their specialty is public engagement. Their specialty is marketing, outreach, et cetera, right? So we're going to get some of their best practice knowledge, again, our own team's knowledge, and the CAC's knowledge to put these listening sessions together, one in each of the affected 7 clusters. The way that's really going to look is we're going to have the CAC members present, right? Our staff, the consultants there. And the way it's going to look is there's going to be a presentation first. So they're going to get information from the consultant and our staff, right? Because we have to convey that information first to the public. The CAC members are really going to be the facilitators. So the way it's going to look is the CATC members are going to facilitate the listening session within their home communities. And that is going to be supported by our consultant staff and our own facility staff as the subject matter experts for that content piece. But the CAC members are really the facilitators for that. In essence, the consultant has been tasked to come up with 2 viable solution sets. This is a very complex thing. I want to explain why we're doing this different. In days of old, if you remember, and I'll explain why that probably doesn't work so good, is we did a major data dump on these citizen and paneled citizen-led communities and said, kind of, good luck, throw the spaghetti in the wall and see what works, right? Do you remember how hard that was when we were doing a small area redistricting? This is 7 massive feeder districts. It really covers, you know, the geographic mass of half the county, right? You authorized us to hire subject matter experts that have done this across the nation and even here regionally, right? To come up with viable solution sets that fit a host of parameters. It's that crazy multivariable calculus equation again, Miss Ellis, right? And the board policy and reg, as you all know, has a series of factors that we have to take into account. The consultant obviously was privy to those, right? We shared all that. So those are the factors that are taken into account there. They've developed 2 scenarios. So those scenarios will be presented, right? The rationale will be presented behind them, and an opportunity, right? This is a listening session now. So now it's the public's opportunity to begin to provide feedback to that. Feedback's not just going to be you attend a meeting and you miss it, you lost your chance, right? We're going to have other channels to get feedback, just like you, the board. People can come testify before you, but they can get you emails, letters, a lot of other ways. We want as much input as possible from that. We're going to get all that information and we're going to record that information, right? We want to archive it. That's critical pieces of it. And it's not just information, but that's going to begin shaping the plan, right? So after we've held that first listening session, the CAC group will reconvene now for their second meeting. Their second meeting will now be to begin to digest, debrief, and see how they can utilize or deploy the feedback that they received from the result of the first listening session. So what are some of the key insights? What are some of the key takeaways? What are some of the key concerns? What are some of the things that we need to internalize and potentially adapt or modify to sort of refine and make the initial 2 plans better, right? We also, at that second meeting, want to begin formulating the strategy for community forums. This is going to be different than the listening sessions, and I'll explain the why in a second. And again, we want to make sure that we've comprehensively, at least at that point, taken stock of any of the other input or other important information that we've gleaned. Those sessions, again, just like the first committee session, will be a business meeting. It will be available for public viewing. It will be recorded for folks that couldn't make it so they can view it afterwards. But that will not be a time to directly question the CAC members. That is their business. They have a lot of work to do, right? They need that time to get that work done. So that second meeting of the CAC on redistricting is going to be that sort of mid to late October timeframe. In the beginning of November, then, we are going to have a community-wide, you might as well call it county-wide, forum on redistricting. It's going to be open to all residents of the county, all stakeholders of the county. Now, yes, will we heavily market it to the 7 districts that are going to be heavily impacted by this? Absolutely. But does that mean that somebody else who may live in one district and have a magnet kid in somewhere else, or a business member that looks to have graduates or interns or whatever, right? We want input from everybody. So the community-wide forum is on purpose much broader than the targeted listening sessions. Again, the format's going to be a little bit the same. It's going to start with the subject matter experts, our consultant, our staff, providing some information. Some of the folks weren't able to make it to one of the listening sessions, right? So we need to do this again. We need to get the information out there again, make sure that we have an opportunity to share that information. And then that's where it flips and we begin gathering that additional community feedback, right, from a more broad basis on those scenarios that were previously developed and or possibly refined by now. And this will be information not just that my staff and the consultants will be taking in, but your CAC members will be taking that in at the same time, right? So the community forum should wrap up around mid-November, and that's where the third and hopefully final meeting with the CAC and redistricting will take place. So now we're in sort of the late November timeframe. That will review the results of the forums, right? We've already internalized the listening sessions, but we'll internalize the input that we've gathered from the forums. We'll discuss any new ideas, any adjustments that are necessary, any tweaks or out-of-the-box ideas that need to still be vetted. The purpose then is to create a final set of recommendations that, per your policy and reg, go to the superintendent of schools. So where are we going with the rest of this journey then? In December, according to the policy and reg, the superintendent has to bring forward to this body his recommendations on redistricting, if there are any. We anticipate there will be this year. So he will bring forward to you his recommendation. His recommendation will be heavily informed by the work that has preceded that stage. He will deliver that to you in December in accordance with your policy and reg. You then, the board, in the month of January or by January, have to decide what options you want to take out to the public. They can be the option that the superintendent recommended. You yourselves naturally have the choice, the option of putting forward your own redistricting concept, or it could be a concept that came in externally to us. Those are all contemplated within your policy and reg. But you, the board, no later than a January timeframe, have to decide which ones you are going to move forward. It doesn't mean they're going to happen. What you're voting on in January is to take them forward to a public briefing session. And then you, the board, are going to hold public hearings on that. Now, that is now your opportunity to get the input, right? State law says that for a redistricting to take effect the following year, to be implemented the following year, it has to be voted on and concluded by a local board of education no later than the end of the month of April. But we're talking about April of 2023. That is on purpose. This is a big deal. We want to get it done a year and a half early, if at all possible, so that the community all knows what's going to happen, right? They have the opportunity to make whatever adjustments they need to make. In a community writ large, could be staff members, could be families, could be businesses, right? Everybody should know what is coming as part of redistricting, what the rollout plan is, what the timeline is, so that they can again begin making those informed decisions. So it would be our preference if this board could conclude their work. Although you have an additional year, we would prefer that you conclude this work this April to best position our public and constituents to understand where things are going to be, again, with the construction schedule that Mr. Ruff laid out. With that, Madam President, I think we'd conclude our, unfortunately, rather lengthy remarks, and we turn it back to you.
Thank you, as always, Mr. Sheknovich, and thank you, Mr. Ruff. I hope I get this in order. I believe the first light was Ms. Schalheim's. Questions again first, commentary second round.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate it. I have a question. I'm grateful for the information and for the changes. It's sort of a sea changes you alluded to. I was looking through the reg, and so I'm a little confused, and maybe this is a Ms. Ortiz question, but it said that the superintendent may form a redistricting committee, and then later it says that the redistricting committee shall, which is, the legal may shall difference, be comprised of, 3 people from each affected school. So am I looking at like a former version of the reg? Help me out.
No, that's a wonderful question. I anticipated that.
Yeah.
So
that's why he's smiling.
let's go back to your first phrase.
Yeah.
May.
May.
So the superintendent may. So if we wanted to follow the traditional route, and I'll just be blunt with you, if all we were dealing with was West County Elementary School, i.e. Two Rivers School, whatever, and we're only looking at 1 or 2 elementary schools being impacted, it's the same middle school no matter what, the same high school no matter what, we'd probably go down the more traditional route. This level of effort, this lift, so before you stopped reading, if you went just a little further, it envisions that 2 or likely 3 members of each affected school.
Yeah.
We're going to have upwards of 60 schools affected. 60 times 3. Can you imagine having a committee of 180? Like, where are you going to
No,
put them,
I
right? And a
can't.
committee of 180 can't even function correctly, right? It just doesn't work. And so because of that, and again, I'll applaud Miss Ellis, and Dr. Tobin was, a member of it as well as Miss Ortiz. We knew this was coming down. That word may, the first one that you read there, used to say shall. It was changed to may on purpose with the advice of, and it was vetted by Miss Ortiz, who's an attorney, and by Mr. Burns as well, to make sure that it provided us the flexibility, but also comported with the legal requirements. So we are not following the branch of the tree that is still there today, that is still 100% viable, and will be used in the future on more compartmentalized redistricting activities. But when we are looking at more comprehensive things, whether it's sizable chunks of the county or maybe even the entire county, we have to go a different way. And so we've elected to go the other way that the policy and reg allows us to go.
I'm really grateful for that clarification, just because I'm sure all of us are going to get that question. So thank you. And one more tiny question. I'm just going to read them. I just want to make sure I have them right. The 7 you were talking about is Old Mill, Mead, Arundel. Say I've Mead twice.
Yeah, it's on your cover. It should be on
It's
your
on the
cover
cover
sheet.
sheet.
Yep.
Okay, I'll refer to the cover sheet. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Thank you. I believe Ms. Ellis was the next light.
Thank you. I do have several questions, and I did submit some questions up front to hope it would all be covered. But if you bear with me, as you alluded to, Mr. Cheknovich, I've been very, very involved in this process from the time I became a board member and was thrown right into a redistricting in my community. Okay, so here goes. Okay, so to reiterate, regulations do not need to be rewritten to follow this path that you have laid before us.
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. They
Okay.
do not have to be rewritten to follow this path.
Okay, another really, I believe, quick, easy one. Press release went out, and I'm sorry, again, I have so many documents. I thought the cover sheet I saw did not have Arundel on it, but we're opening a new elementary school.
It may have
In
been an earlier
Odenton,
version.
so-
The one that's online
Okay.
right now says Arundel.
Okay.
It could have been a draft. It could have been an
Well, I
earlier
can assure you
incarnation.
it did not go out in the press release because people from my community have reached, or from my district have reached out.
We've been hearing. yeah.
So to ease everyone's concerns, Arundel is included in this. We
Right,
couldn't open this new
Arundel-
school
Arundel-
without
Well, so let me be careful with that, Ms. Ellis.
the Arundel cluster.
Yeah, but let me be careful. So here's we have to create an attendance zone for West County Elementary School. Okay, I also don't want to create panic in the streets. I'm not recommending, we are not looking at, for example, moving youngsters out of Arundel High School or Arundel Middle School into Mead or Old Mill or something. So Arundel's included, but it's included a little bit differently in that the purpose of it being included is to create the boundary for the new elementary school and everything that goes along with that. I mean, including the articulation path. That is a little bit different than the other 6. The other 6 are being looked at from ECI programs, i.e. birth, to age 21. Everything is being revisited in the other 6. It's a very, very deep dive. And so, yes, is Arundel included? But I'm trying to say, they're not going to be drug into the large scale because their scope is just a little bit different.
But then, so many questions, I'm sorry. So when will families know what schools in the Arundel cluster are being considered to be impacted?
When the website goes up and the draft models that the consultant has come up with, et cetera. I mean, it's again, fully transparent, right? I mean, everything's going to be available on the website. Everything is going to be discussed at their cluster specific listening sessions. Their CAC members will be fully involved in the whole process from the beginning to the end. When I contemplate, when we get to that point, hopefully no later than April, the board probably is going to be looking at split the vote. And by that, I mean, you're probably going to have a seminal question that's going to be concerning West County Elementary School. And you probably, I'm not sure, but you probably are going to want to deal with the Arundel cluster as an item. And then separate and apart from that, you probably want to deal with the other 6 clusters. But we'll see that when we get there.
Okay, and then one more little question before I have a really big one that I need to dig into. I recall when we did this, when I was a new member, was for opening a new school. It was 2 years before the school was opening that we did the redistricting, just like this scenario. And there were questions, the language of, I think, the state law and the policy made it, in other words, we don't have to get this done. It would be better for the community you're suggesting. We don't have to get this done by April. But because the policy, and I believe the law, mentions specifically April, it made it seem like we couldn't continue the process. So just to be clear, if the goal is to get it right above all else, and we don't get it completely to where we believe it's right by April, we have room to work.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, the new policy and the same language is written in the regulation. The superintendent shall conduct a periodic system-wide review of attendance areas. Such a system-wide review shall occur as soon as practicable after the occurrence of a scenario that could impact facility planning, including the approval of the general development plan for Anne Arundel County and the opening of a new high school in the county. I was very, very involved, and I was the one who sought out this type of language. So my question for you, first of all, is when is the last time Anne Arundel County underwent a countywide redistricting, to your knowledge?
I can only go back to the beginning of the 2000s. It wasn't then. If it occurred back in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, I wasn't employed here back then. So it's not been, at least for, 2+ decades.
Okay, so I think 2 more questions. I am going to have a statement later after questions are done. 2 more questions. When we opened a new school a couple of years ago, and students were drawn from 2 of our high schools. As far as I'm aware, we have not taken advantage at this point in balancing facilities from that move. And Annapolis High School is very, very overcrowded. We're hearing from that community. Why are we not incorporating that into this plan?
Okay, so a couple things. One, timing matters, right? The policy and reg got updated. I think it was either February, March, whatever the dates on the document. We started this journey back in December, at least with the board approval. We staff actually started this journey way before we even brought the contract to you, right? So this project really has to do with that, with the upper third of the county or so. First piece of information. So timing matters, right? So are we going to do that comprehensive look? Should we be doing that? Yes. Is that part of this project? No, that's not part of this project at the moment. Second thing is when we go back to the redistricting that you're referring to, and that was really targeted at creating the attendance zones for the Crofton School,
Right.
which at that time drew from both Arundel and South River.
Right.
We said that would create that once the Crofton School got fully populated, and this is the first year now, just last week, that they're 9 through 12, that we would look at actually two opportunities back then. One opportunity was to say, okay, given the space that's been created now at both South River High School and at Arundel High School through the opening of Crofton, could we do redistricting action? That was one of the possibilities. The second possibility is that it was my understanding, it still remains unless it's changed, that we wanted to explore the option of creating additional magnets. We were on a pathway where we had completed the initial magnet rollout plan that took us 15 years or so, that we were, again, this is under previous leadership, Dr. Bedell said this, just a little bit of context here. We were having active discussions about, okay, now we've completed this massive multi-year rollout of all of our magnets. So what comes next? And we basically are, in a way, at a little bit of a fork of a road in that we do need to determine, right? Because I know, for example, we talked about opening up I'm going to call it computer science, I'm old school, but computer science, tech, whatever, magnet. We talked about a grow your own education teacher magnet, right? They need homes. And if you give away the real estate, don't have a home for it. So we have not gotten to the point, and that's really, a leadership discussion, a board discussion, a superintendent discussion. We have not gotten to the point that, are we going to do the phase 2 of magnets? If so, what are they going to be and where? You need a home for them. Or if not, you're absolutely correct. Because if we're not going to do that, then redistricting for school balancing would be the appropriate thing. The benefits of magnets, as we all know, not just as it sort of expand our palette of educational opportunities, but the two ways to balance enrollment, it's really a push-pull thing, right? Either you can create a magnet, and through voluntary enrollment, you can draw kids into it. That's one way to bring kids into a school, potentially Arundel, right? Or you do a redistricting and you push kids into the school. Either way, you're bringing youngsters into the school and relieving some of the pressure in surrounding areas. Magnets traditionally have been a broader footprint, whereas redistricting has been sort of a more tighter, more focused thing. So my answer is, I think we have to answer a couple questions, and then the answers to those questions is going to guide the way forward on the next steps of this body writ large, board, superintendent, staff, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to leave a question, I think, on the table because I don't think it can be answered right now. And again, I do have a statement. And the question is, where do we go from here if we are not comfortable? And by the way, first of all, thank you for thinking through this process, because I love the idea of using the CAC. I guess I have another minor concern. You're obligating particular members to this committee who maybe don't have the time. So that has to be considered as far as they have to have an alternate, right? But I love the idea of using them as our committee. I have concerns, and I'm going to speak about it, but it sounds to me like some decisions have to be made quickly before we get too far down this path.
Okay, thank you.
As far as what alternatives.
What fork we're going to take, right? I believe Ms. Corkadell was next.
Thank you, President Tobin. A couple quick points. That was a lot to cover, and and I look forward to getting some of the details that you guys are rattling off there. But in general, one of the concerns that was raised was in the last redistricting process, and I know the passion of our parents and our communities, and especially when we're talking about dividing lines in the middle of communities, which occasionally happen, and how to fix that. And everybody wants the shiny new school, right? You always have that, some of those pushes. In the interest of advocating, some of our volunteers experienced a lot of aggressive, threatening sort of discourse with the general population. And some included some pretty significant ones as well. And although our former chair of that committee for Crofton, for example, handled it very well with lots of grace, I'd like to see that not happen again. And outside of pleading with our parents for reasonable, rational behavior, is there a way we can set up email structures for them, or some sort of a couple more dedicated things, and insulate them from their private emails? And in social media, I know we're even more limited, but at the very least on the emails, because I am a little concerned that this level of passion for redistricting, it gets intense. And you say redistricting to any school board member anywhere in the nation, and they all cringe, man, because it really is intense. And it's even more so, I think, for our volunteers, as they're hashing out those details. And they're kind of out there for us. And I think we have an obligation to step up for them. And so as we work through, if there's any additional resources, I just thought of email right off the top of my head, having been shared a couple that were sent to some of our volunteers during the last round, and other things too. I know there's other devices and ways we can do that, but are those things that you guys are gonna maybe work through and figure out? Because it can be quite a bit for a volunteer.
So three things. One, I wish I would have videotaped our superintendent 2 weeks ago when he spoke loudly about civility and in the way folks comport themselves and present themselves and interact with others, right? The part about, disagreeing without being disrespectful or disagreeable, right? So I think that's one. I think that messaging needs to go out. That's one. Two, the consultants we're dealing with, that I happen to say that they just wrapped up Prince George's and Montgomery.
Oh.
Really big places with very, I'm sure, equally passionate, vested citizenry, right? So we are hoping to learn from them, and some of those strategies that you talked about are certainly things we would like to utilize to the extent that they are appropriate here. But the third thing I want to say is this, that we got to be careful, because we don't want to stifle public input. We don't want to be accused of stifling public voice, right? I mean, this is, like you said, this is the third rail of school board leadership, right? And folks are passionate and vested into it. We got to make sure that we balance making sure that we've got access and voice and agency in the decision-making process, while, yes, making sure that we protect the process, protect the people, right?
And I got
so it's a balance. So I think your point is very well taken. I appreciate you bringing that up. It certainly gives us something to think about.
Right. And there's multiple modes that people can communicate with us via that website. So there will be an email associated with that website. There will be surveys that folks can take to voice their opinions and concerns. And then there'll be plenty of opportunity to review video of prior meetings, and then also participate and know when future meetings are going to take place.
Yeah, I think it was that, at some point, I don't know if it came from the members of the committee or a combination, probably them more than anything else, trying to be helpful, handing out the personal emails. And that's where it started getting a little bit, crazier perhaps, as it related, especially with the chair and the one other member.
Yeah, and if folks are uncomfortable giving out that email, which would probably not be a best action, there is an email dedicated to this project that will be posted on that website.
Great, thank you. I do have just one more, and it's a compound question, so my apologies there, but it is directly related. So I guess pandemic related, the board never did receive the census report that I believe the county and the state were providing school boards. So as they start to plan for what the projections of population are, the realignment. And this is data, I think, the timeliness of this is critical. And I know I have made a recommendation to my fellow colleagues to receive that information, whether it's in presentation or just in physical form for us to review. I would be fine with that.
So
but-
they have put out chunks. So we're talking about the federal government now, right? This is the Census Bureau. So chunks of that information are out. Parts of it have not been issued yet because some of it is being challenged. And because of some of the challenges that are happening in other areas nationally, the Census Bureau hasn't been able to finish all and compile and issue the full report. So parts of it are available, parts of it are not. I will tell you that our partners in county government are much more heavily dialed into that than we are, and we've actually been getting some of our information from them more directly. But look, it's information all of us want and need. We use it routinely in our daily business, but some of it is currently still inaccessible because some of those challenges have to be resolved.
So we're at ground zero with none here. And I think when we talk about redistricting in particular, I think understanding not just the new number of where we truly are, but also, where we are projected to be. Because when we start discussing the nuances of what do we do with the 200 seats at South River that vacated, 283 or whatever that amount was, or projected amount, I don't know what the final ended up being when they shifted back into Crofton, back to their home. That we discussed, as you had mentioned and just reported to Ms. Ellis, that, that may provide opportunities to expand a magnet program that has thousands of kids on a wait list every year, and as well as create new opportunities that our ECAP programs cannot fully provide for, and the others for careers. But I really think it would be helpful to get that data and some similar of what our projections are for growth, because I'm a little hesitant on the South River, because I know initially we were projected to grow at a very small rate. I'm seeing that get increase a lot faster, and it's incidental, but I know how to look at the incidental. I think maybe in the months while you guys are working on the maps, we could be getting that information. Is that information that we can find a way to put it relevant for this project? Not
here's what I'll tell you, and some of you guys may be happy about this. Kyle and I are. Some of you may cringe in about a second, but if you go back to some of your high school courses, you had this. You had a module in algebra or calculus that was best fit curve, right? in our line of business, you never bank the farm on one data set. So us, the county government, the consultants have access to multiple data sets, not just the Census Bureau, but we have multiple data resources that overlay and provide a more robust picture. And then they use the machine algorithms to identify basically where is kind of the best fit, right? What are all those data points telling you? From all that, digesting all of that, what is the most reliable composite? And we are, again, heavily relying on the consultants to do that, but we do that ourselves. If you go look in your master plan, you will see in the index the list of sources, the reference sources that we used to come up with our projections. And you will see that the Census Bureau information is just one bullet. There's about 9 or 10 others below that. We use everything from both birth rate from the health department to tremendous amount of information that we get from the State Department of Planning, that we get the county, planning and zoning office, that we get from in and out migration data that we get through the realtor sector or the Commerce Department here in the state. So it is not, it would be very dangerous to hang your hat on just one piece of data. So even if some of the data sets, some from the Census Bureau have not yet been released because we're using so many other data sets at the same time, I'm not losing sleep over that little piece.
Yeah, I was just using it as an example that we need that type. I would suggest maybe perhaps the form. I'm not concerned about the how many you need there, but just having those summaries in our hand early enough, because some of the challenges is when we're having conversations with communities on our end and teeing up, the opportunities to have the discussions, it's helpful to know where my school's going to be at 5 years from now, or at least where we anticipate it to be at. We know that number changes literally every single month. But overall, knowing that projection to understand try to put a Band-Aid on an immediate problem, creating that larger impact that we will not be able to unwind easily in the future. Because I believe our goal isn't to spread the pain, but to eliminate the pain from those experiencing it, not at the expense of other students and other schools. And that is one of, I think, our biggest challenges as a group, is to be mindful that our goal is not to impose new woe on another in the interest of alleviating to the some and crowding out the schools, when our objective with the blueprint and where Maryland's moving to and where we are is going to be there. So any data whatever the format that you guys are using, the outcome, I don't need 1,000 graphs. I just need to kind of know my projections.
I think we kind of got that for you, though. So, I mean, you're one, we kind of create a one-stop shopping solution for you that you actually vote on in June, which is the Education Facility Master Plan.
Correct.
That has basically 10 years looking backwards data, and then has 10 years looking forward data. And remember that master plan is not just, prepared by staff utilizing all that input and voted on by this board. That plan is then sent to the Maryland State Department of Planning and the Anne Arundel County Office of Planning Zoning. Those two entities independently review that plan, review the data, review the computations included upon that, and then they either put their stamp of approval, right? So you have two external validation or vetting sources on that, or they have questions or concerns or require modifications, right? So that is the place that I think we draw that information together and not just share it with you and your colleagues, but it's available on the website. We reference it all the time. It is sort of that common data set that should be the platform from which all of our discussions are taking place. And again, It's annually redone. So no later than every June, it is redone. So it is continuously going through this iterative reevaluation, refinement, taking into account any new input data that we get from that multitude of sources. So I would urge you and the general public to first start shopping at the education facility master plan rather than taking a look at birth and cohort survival rates of
No, I don't want
infants
that.
from the Maryland State Department of Health. We do that.
Yes.
You and the public probably don't want to get into that level of the weeds.
I don't need to know that. You're absolutely right. I just went in, I guess because when we started to get into alternatives, and it's inevitable with redistricting, I just want to make sure that we stay on the same data structures together, because all of a sudden we started seeing alternative numbers crunching.
I'm going to
So,
interject
yeah.
because we have two more presentations in
I'm so
front of us.
sorry. I'm so
And
sorry.
these are conversations I think that can continue. I know Mr. Silkworth has been waiting, and I know there are comments afterwards. I would like to call a 20-minute lunch break after this item. It's my understanding the other two will be slightly shorter, but I would just remind colleagues to keep their comments as brief as they can. Mr. Silkworth.
Thank you. So Alex, I might be able to answer a question earlier that was brought up about the history. I go back 50 years and I have no recollection of any comprehensive redistricting over the past 50 years. And I think I'm pretty accurate about that. Having said that, I'm very happy about the CIC. I think that's marvelous. This is going to be historic. And it has to be. We have over 10,000, is my understanding, open seats in Anne Arundel County. And we kind of have to fix that. But my question is, in terms of this being limited to the 7 clusters, we have some schools that are way over capacity. We have some schools that are way under capacity. And some of the schools that are under capacity and over capacity are outside of these 7 schools here. So I heard you say that you don't think it's a good idea for us to do a comprehensive redistricting, including with this project. That's what I heard. So do you have a suggestion about what we should do? Because we have to do something about those 10,000 seats. If you have a school that's 79% versus a school that's 107 or whatever, we have to do something about that. And so you say we do have like a year as a grace.
So you asked me for a suggestion. Here's my suggestion. A suggestion is that you do this and you knock out 7 of your clusters, right? 6 of these 7 clusters are completely comprehensive, as deep a dive as you could possibly get. So whether you argue if that's 6 or 7, but let's say it's 6, be conservative, right? This takes care of half your county basically doing this. Step 1. My suggestion is you get this done by this April, because I think that's what's best for the public, to give them the most heads up on huge implications, right? Step 1. Step 2, you have a new superintendent. The new superintendent is working with you to create his vision, right? He's already shared with you his 100-day plan. From there, that's going to be a springboard to a conversation that school system leadership should have a board leadership. I reference an unfinished conversation. Are we going to do more magnets or not? Are there going to be some other flavors of schools, right? And it's not just magnets, right? There's Montessori schools, you name it. There's a palette of school types that we can have. I think you should have that conversation with the superintendent. I think while this is going on, you spend this next year having that conversation. Okay? And then out of that, if you finish this work by this April, guess what? You have nothing to do for next April. But maybe we can find something for you to do. And maybe the results of those conversation with the superintendent you have during the course of this year will tee up a presentation that you may have next September before you. You asked me for my opinion.
Okay, thank you. And for board members, I had an APF meeting yesterday, and I do have some of the data that was presented that Ms. Corkada was looking for that I can share.
APF, what's APF?
Adequate public facilities.
Adequate, yeah. County-wide. Okay, I believe, Ms. Ellis, you had a comment. Any other questions before that? No?
No
I
more
see.
questions.
Okay.
Thank you. And sorry, I'm pulling up the policy again. Here it is. And sorry, when I said I had a statement, I wish it had been a prepared statement. I just jotted down some notes, so bear with me for a moment. So again, the policy and regulations were recently revised. There was a reason that the policy committee took this on and the board passed this new policy. And there was a reason that the piece of the policy that I read a little while ago about a comprehensive review was written into that policy. We have now had confirmation from two who would know very well about the history of this county that at this point, no one can seem to recall a comprehensive countywide redistricting happening. So this was written into our policy. And again, the opening of a new school is one of the driving factors for the superintendent to take a comprehensive look at our district. We're now talking about the opening of a second school. So we've got a lot to play with here. So to me, and I'm going to talk about why I think this is important, but this is not an opportunity that we will reasonably see again for years to come if we don't take advantage of it right now. I believe we should have all clusters at the table. This is not going to be a very popular opinion with, I'm sure, many communities, and I understand why. I'm a parent, we all are very passionate about giving our own children the very best opportunities. So I'm going to be blunt. I'm not here to get elected again. I'm here to carry out the duties I was elected to carry out. And giving every student the very best opportunity for a world-class education is what I believe I was elected to do. And that is why that is the first position statement in the redistricting policy. This board's policy, a fundamental goal of the board is to equitably balance the utilization of facilities and provide capacity for school programs and student services as they develop. So as far as those school programs, Mr. Cheknovich, you mentioned the magnets. I'm a magnet parent. All 4 of my students have taken advantage of magnet programs. I'm happy that we have them. But I can't justify keeping any school overcrowded for the sake of the possibility of some magnet program that we would like to consider. So in my mind, redistricting should be a math equation first that equalizes all voices, and then factor in the reasonable and logical community factors that do not favor any particular community or demographic. So by not undertaking this now, we at best are creating the perception that certain communities are being favored or protected or insulated from decisions that may impact them as we try our best to balance facilities for all students. Mr. Cheknovich mentioned knocking out 7 clusters, and therefore we would have that part done. But that's what ties our hands from being able to cross lines that maybe should be crossed, that boundaries that we would not be able to move if we did this in a phased process. Again, given that this has not been done in this county for as long as anyone can remember, we're all aware, we've all heard from communities where there are boundaries that simply don't make sense because it's been done piecemeal for so many years. And absolutely, every time we need to move students from one school to another doesn't mean we have to look at the whole county. I agree with that. But we're not going to get this opportunity again for the foreseeable future. And so I'm making the statement, I don't know what's next. I don't know how we go from the plan that was laid before us to stepping it up to a county-wide. And so I'm not going to make any kind of motion right now because I just don't, I would need our attorney involved to help me with a motion. But this is very important that we get this right. We have the time. So I guess I will be speaking further with our president and our superintendent on what's next for this board to at least take this topic on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds to me like we will, if you are amenable, Dr. Bedell, take up further conversations about this in light of what is in our policy and what some of the opportunities might be that are presented. Are there additional statements or questions? I would like to call a 20-minute recess for lunch. Did you have anything further, gentlemen, that you wanted to add? Thank you. A reminder that we still have a fair amount on the docket, so I'd like to keep this to 20 minutes. So it's 2:54 now, so 2:14? Am I? Yeah, 3:14. Forgive me, it's late. Okay, we are back for another episode. All right. So we will be moving on now to item 5.02, fiscal year 2024 capital budget and 6-year plan capital improvement plan. Dr. Bedell.
All right, so I will pass this over to Alex and team, and this should be a pretty quick overview.
Yep.
Yep. For the record, Alex Shackno, Chief Operating Officer.
Kyle Roof, Supervisor, Planning, Design, and Construction.
So it's our pleasure to be here for item 5.02. It is for information only. There's no action at all required today. It references the fiscal year 2024 capital budget and the 6-year plan. This is a plan that is required to be submitted to the state no later than October 4th of 2022 this year. We will have the opportunity to meet at 6 p.m. on September the 19th to do a deep dive and in-depth work session where the board will get a thorough presentation regarding the subject matter and have ample opportunities to interact with staff and get questions answered. We will appear back before this body again on the 21st of September, where the board will hold a public hearing relative to the capital budget. There will be, again, an opportunity for questions and answers. But at this time, that concludes your presentation, and there is no actions required today.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Schulheim, do you have a question?
Yes, just help me out with the acronyms on page, well, the last one. And apologies if I've seen this before, I don't recall. MDC and MCC and PAFA, what do those all mean?
Those are
Oak Hill Elementary and Sharon's Elementary.
MDC is Motor Control and Distribution Center.
I'm sorry?
Motor Control and Distribution Centers.
Okay.
It transfers power from BG&E into the various units. So for example, it diverts power to the elevator bank, to the HVAC bank, to the lighting bank, so it is where BG&E comes in and then splits out to everything.
And so that's what MDC, MCC mean?
Motor Control Center, that's HVAC specific.
Okay, and then what's PAFA?
Public Address and Fire Alarm.
Got it. Cool, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Corkadell, do you have a question?
Yeah, just kind of a request. I know some of our recurring projects, and I know you guys normally do this, but I would specifically ask, because a lot of times we do glaze over it, but I do have some interest in the athletic stadium improvements. And so if we could get a detailed list of what the projected allocations would be going to
We can
during
cover
our
that at the work
workshop.
session for you.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
great.
during the workshop, that would be great. And no surprise, but just to advise my colleagues, I do have, there is a strong interest of the South County community in exploring the assurance that they get the second turf, particularly because we don't have the availability of Recs and Parks resources that we do in other parts of the county. And so I'd like to just kind of see the snapshot of that, as well as the playground equipment improvements and what we have slated on those two in particular, in addition to what you normally provide. Thank you.
Great. So as usual, I'm sure you and the staff will have that ready to unroll at the workshop. Are there any other, Ms. Schulheim, you still have a light?
Yeah, I have one more question.
Okay.
Sorry, also, what is WWTP, Chesapeake Complex?
Wastewater treatment
Plant.
facility.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
I guess,
ma'am.
I don't know, like acronym deficient today, maybe?
No, you're not.
Okay, cool.
You're not.
Okay, I see no more lights. Thank you. And that brings us to item 5.03, virtual day instruction plan. Dr. Bedell.
All right. Thank you, Madam President. We have two additional senior level staff members who will come up and present this to you all. And just to give you some context, we had a number of days last year where school was canceled, and ultimately that resulted in us having to be in school a little bit longer than intended, it also resulted in the school district, students only having a month between last school year and going into this school year. And I know that there were several concerns or some comments that came up about don't take away snow days. I think what you will hear in this plan is that isn't the intent of the school district, but we also have a responsibility to try to not go into people's summer plans while also still allowing for us to deliver instruction, but also make sure that there is built-in time for students and families to also enjoy these inclement days. And we think we have a plan that we would like to present initially today that will then allow for us to get additional feedback before there is a vote to take action on it.
So thank you, Dr. Bedell. Good afternoon, President Tobin, Vice President Silkworth, members of the board. For the record, Bob Mosier, Chief Communications Officer, and here with Maureen McMahon, Deputy Superintendent, Academics and Strategic Initiatives, to present item 5.03. As Dr. Bedell said, we do have a plan for virtual day instructions. There is a pathway that MSDE has created to allow systems to do this, that will enable systems to repurpose days, as they call it, and thus save days on the end of the year. So I'll walk a little bit through MSDE's plan and then tell you what our version of it is. So MSDE allows school systems up to 8 days, either synchronous or asynchronous, as long as no more than 3 of them are asynchronous. So you can have more than 5 synchronous, but you can't have any more than 3 asynchronous. The use of a virtual day for any grade or grade band does count as one of those 8. So, for example, if you wanted to use a virtual day for on a day where you had kindergarten conferences, for example, that would count as one of your 8. Your synchronous days have to include at least 4 hours of virtual instruction for all students, and we have a plan to do that. We did that last year and the year before. There will be attendance taken for both students and teachers to ensure the fidelity of instruction. MSD is very clear that virtual days cannot negatively impact the student's grade. That doesn't mean they can't do poorly on an assignment, but the fact that a student couldn't access something, as an example, can't automatically result in a missed assignment. So there has to be some meaningful opportunities to make up that work or to get additional support outside of the virtual learning. Something that folks in other districts have said to us that their employees found very important, as you might imagine, that no employee's pay can be negatively impacted by the decision to have a virtual day. So think about cafeteria workers who only get paid on days when they are actually in cafeterias. You heard some discussion earlier about snow days. I'll get to that one in a second, but there are some additional days that MSD says you can consider. Parent-teacher conference days, staff development days, religious observance days. There is one school system that I know of that is repurposing election day and having a virtual day on election day. So we had this conversation with Dr. Bedell, who decided that for this year, given the timing that we're in, it would be best to focus solely on inclement weather days. And so that's the way we've built this plan. So Dr. Bedell mentioned this, but this is a multi-step process. We'll present this to you today. We will put it out for public comment on Friday. It will stay out for 10 days, and we'll come back to you with that comment on the 21st of September. That's your next meeting, and we'll then present it to MSDE. There's a bunch of attestations and those kinds of things that Dr. McMahon and I guess will have to make sure that we are in compliance with. So our plan, students in grades 3 through 12 and all instructional staff will be asked to take their devices home daily. We've already begun that. Schools are already reminding students to do that. Kindergartners through second graders, as you know, have devices at home and don't bring them back and forth. So that's not an issue. So how it will work in practicality, it will be up to Dr. Bedell to decide whether we're going to convert a day. So as you heard Ms. Disney Bates say earlier, right, we may have a good old-fashioned snow day, right? That certainly could happen. If you have a snowstorm that we have lots of power outages, for example, that's an easy one that may result in just a snow day. And the superintendent will also decide whether the instruction will be synchronous or asynchronous. So obviously, if it's asynchronous, we have to have lessons ready to go. And so Ms. Rawls has already begun those discussions with Ms. Disney Bates about how that will work. So those conversations are underway. We don't anticipate any issues there. Whether a day is synchronous or asynchronous, it counts both as a teacher workday and as a student instructional day. So we're keeping on track there. Whenever possible, we will tell people in advance, right? So if the forecast as we sit here on Wednesday is for Thursday night to be a big snowstorm, right? We may push out communication that says, if it snows on Thursday night as expected and Friday, we can't get into schools, it will be a virtual day, it will be synchronous, right? That's not always going to be able to happen because weather is weather in Maryland, right? That's sort of how that works.
5 minutes.
Wait 5 minutes, that's exactly right. This is a decision that we have made to minimize adverse impact on any one marking period. We would limit the days in that marking period to 3. We don't really see that that's going to be a problem, right? I mean, the 3rd marking period begins at the end of January. The 4th marking period begins in April. But the issue is if you have too many in one day, then you can end up with a skewed short marking period. And so we don't want to go there. So just as one other reminder I meant to say at the outset, so as we talk about shortening the school year is supposed to end on the 16th of June this year, and there are 3 inclement weather days built in. So if you switch 3 days to virtual instruction, as an example, you wouldn't have to use any of those days, and you would just lop those off of the end of the school year. So that is our quick presentation in the interest of time, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
I'm sorry, I believe, Ms. Ellis, your light was.
It's very nice of you, Ms. Frank.
Did I get that wrong?
We're very close
Apologies.
together. Just very quickly. So I'm thinking about the old days before this was an option. And if I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, we would build in 3 days and let's say we use 5.
Mhm.
We couldn't ask forgiveness for those 2 days. Those students would have to come to school. There's a threshold, right? Where-
Right, you have to modify your calendar by at least 3 days. And then, but modifying your calendar doesn't include building in those days.
Okay, that's my question.
Right.
So how did,
So
How does
this
this play
is what happened, to your point, this is what happened last year. We used our 3 days
right,
and then we went over, but we didn't modify our calendar in any way, so we couldn't ask for forgiveness for those days.
okay,
This is set up to allow you to use virtual days so you don't have to get in that boat.
right. So currently, we have, with this plan, we have 3 days we've already built into our calendar and the opportunity for 8 virtual days of some sort.
Mhm.
If we have the worst winter that we've ever seen and we end up with
And
we end up
hurricane.
with
Yes.
13 snow days. But those will have to be made up.
Listen, Miss Ellis, I was here when we had, well, this one was between 2012 and 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where we were out of school for 8 days because of that massive snowstorm.
That's right.
Like the snow was, my daughter could stand on it and was
It
at
happens.
the top of the tree in the yard. So
Right, right.
it could happen. We don't want it to happen.
Welcome back.
But
Mayor County.
to your point, first of all, I think if we got to that, we'd be talking a different conversation with MSDE.
Yeah.
Right? As every school system did. But I don't want people to think that we can suddenly shave a week and a half off the end of the school year. And the
Right.
reason is that you have 3 days built on the end, but if you used all 8 as virtual, well, right now you're using all 8 as in person. So a school day is still a school day. You would only take the 3 off the end.
Right. Okay. So it's our discretion when we use those. If we want to just say, have fun and go play, kids, we can do that. But then we won't be able to shave that day off.
That's right. Then you would use one of the 3 that you've built in. That's
But
correct.
if we took election day, we would shave a day off.
Right.
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 Sorry.
So,
And
that
so-
was my other question. So you mentioned there's people who are concerned about how many other days we have in the calendar. if we start doing that.
Yeah.
So
we're
the
gonna-
conversation we had, if you want me to address this, the conversation we had is the timing of this in September and people who have built their schedules already, right? You remember the many conversations we had last year about trying to come up with days, right? Would result in some significant confusion on the part of families, right? As we start, let's just I'll use election day, right? If we all of a sudden said, well, there's going to be school on election day, so now we have to set up synchronous instruction or asynchronous instruction, and families remember or they don't remember. And so that's a conversation we'll have with the calendar committee as we convene them this fall for next year. Although I have to tell you in all honesty, this plan by MSDE is for this year. It's not a forever going forward. I mean, the reaction from other school systems that we've talked to, at least that I've talked to, has been very positive. So I don't think it's going to go away, but
Right.
I couldn't say that for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but it definitely keeps us clean. And if we're saying our sole focus is to utilize these days for inclement weather days, then that eliminates any nebulous thoughts that people may have around why aren't you using it for this or that. But I do agree, it is a deeper conversation that needs to happen with the calendar committee for the future. How do we leverage these days if there are some other ways that we can use them?
Right. So currently our last day of school is on a Friday, correct?
Correct.
And so teachers are working that following Monday. Is that correct?
Teachers are working that following Tuesday because Monday
Oh,
is
right.
Juneteenth.
Right. They're working that following Tuesday.
Correct.
So something for the board to consider is if we have 2 snow days and then go to virtual, the teachers would be able to end on Friday. Okay.
Okay, again, I think I'm following the right order here. Ms. Frank?
I see Ms. Ortiz in the audience, so if I speak out of turn or incorrectly, if you could just give me a little wave. My understanding, so I took some recommendations from the board. I worked with some of my legislators, and this has evolved from some of those conversations, and I'm really pleased to see it taking form at this point. My understanding was that we have to have our 3 inclement weather days before this becomes an option, and I hadn't heard that stated, so I just wanted to be sure that that was correct.
So that's not my understanding.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, okay.
But I will be happy to contact MSDE either this afternoon or tomorrow morning and ask that question.
Okay, yeah, so I believe the legislation was passed. That's what it said. So is MSDE giving us extra leeway?
I'll ask the
Okay,
question for you.
okay.
I don't know. But that's not my understanding. We had a meeting of school communicators from across the state in July, late July, and we this was on our agenda and no one brought that up.
Okay.
So that's not my understanding.
Sure. So the legislation that when it started, and obviously it could have been amended, then I missed that too. Originally stated that you would have to take your 3 snow days. After that, you would have the option to go to virtual if you so chose. And in the conversations that this board had, we really liked that because, nobody wants to miss out on the magic of a snow day. But nobody wants to sit at home if they called for ice and it was really rain and then you have to miss your summer vacation. So when we heard from public comment, the balancing act that needed to occur, I thought that was a really good balance. So I would just say if we decide to move forward with a plan, I would really want to enshrine that, my expectation, even from the origin of this, was that kids get good snow days. If it's a rain day, great, we have the option to go virtual, but I would always want to see kids having that option to go outside and play in the snow. I would never want them to sit in front of a computer if they're trying to build an igloo.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the next phase, the conversations we will continue to have with TAC. Where I came from, we did create an abbreviated schedule that did allow for families to have ample time to play outside while still being able to accomplish, learning in an asynchronous manner. So, just know that is the plan, not to have kids in the entire day on a computer.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I just want to, so if you could follow up with me on that particular question. and then just put the concern out there. And then I heard it again in public comment. So just so that we're all
Okay.
aware, that would be
Yeah,
great.
we just need everybody to understand that a good old fashioned snow day then counts as another day in June, right? That's the trade-off.
Well, no, originally the idea was you have your 3 days that are snow days that you must go through first. And then you can move to virtual after that. So you still have them built into the calendar. So you get 3 snow days before you have the option to go virtual.
Right, but if we have no, just to be clear, if we have no snow days at all, forget this virtual plan. If we have no snow days at all, the school year ends on the 13th of June. Those three, the 14th, 15th, and 16th come off
Yeah.
because we have a 184-day calendar.
But we have built it into our calendar to
Correct.
say,
Right.
you know,
Assuming there's snow.
assuming, yeah.
And I guess that would be the million-dollar question. If we have this option and we don't have to use those 3 days and we're able to knock out, asynchronous instructional days and give back at the end of the year those days back to the staff, would that be an option for us to consider? But that's something we can talk about, and we can talk with the union and bring that back as a recommendation. I mean, personally, I would say I'll leave it alone.
And again, we're going to solicit public comment, and so
Okay.
there'll be an
Yeah.
open-ended comment field in that option, which we'll provide all that to you.
Okay, and then the second piece of this was, you said that this is for this year only. So we're just waiting to see what MSDE decides, or is there more legislation being presented that would enshrine some of this?
I don't think there's any need for any further legislation or anything, and Ms. Ortiz can correct me if I'm wrong there, but I just say that to you because MSD put it out as the 2022-23 virtual day instruction plan.
I'm
It
always happy
wasn't
to-
beginning in 2022-23.
Yeah, I'm always happy to pick up and call my deli.
I understand.
So.
I'm
Let
sure
me
they're
get that
happy to
answer.
hear
Let me
from
get
you.
those two answers
Not right
for
now.
you before you call out.
Yeah, I was with you.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yes. Yeah. Just loop me back in.
Will do.
Thank you.
I think it was Ms. Corkadell and then Ms. Schallheim.
Thank you, Dr. Tobin. Thank you guys for the information. 2 real quick questions. And the first is, so we still, although we'd like not to ever say it out loud, I think in this moment in time, there may be occasions where a school needs to be closed or a classroom needs to be closed, whether it is for a facility issue or for a health related issue. Does MSD calculate, so this magic number of 8, are those part of the 8 or do they sit out separate?
Yeah, so that's a question we have already put into MSDE because the guidelines say a grade or grade band. They don't say a school because of lack of power or flipping to virtual for COVID as we did with some schools last year. But it's our belief right now that those are outside of this.
Yeah, because that would, I think, be helpful when we go to have discussions with staff or with the community after we seek the clarification. So glad we're on the same page on that, and I look forward to the outcome. And then second is, I think when we talk about this and the experiences that some folks felt traumatized with throughout our year and a half of in and out of virtual and partials and everything, particularly for our children who are receiving special education services. And so in that regard, is there anything that you can share about that may help alleviate some of those concerns? Because I just want to make sure that that our whole community is going to be comfortable with it. So if there's any information either now or the next time we have the conversation, that would be great.
It's a great question. And in fact, we learned a lot during COVID with respect to servicing students with all needs, right? And so during these virtual days of instruction, although they will be synchronous if Dr. Bedell makes that decision, and asynchronous accordingly, the notion of meeting a student's needs who maybe has an IEP and really needs extensive services, the instruction will be delivered based on the student's needs to the best of our ability and the teacher's ability at that time. It won't be perfect. I won't say that it will be, right? But in most cases, we learned what we learned, and we know how to do what's best for those students virtually.
Yeah, and this is not a long-term thing.
No.
And I think it has some benefits that we wouldn't previously be able to. Could you go over maybe a couple of the highlighted benefits?
The
I'm not an
highlighted benefits,
educator.
interestingly enough, some students really thrived in that environment. Some students, I'll give an example. We had parents who talked to us, students with high anxiety in the school setting. They really thrived in the virtual environment. But there were plenty of students that thrived just in general. They became a community online, and it worked for them. There were students for whom it did not work as well. I would say, though, Dr. Bedell said at the beginning, we are reducing the school day. So it won't be 6.5 hours or even 5.5 hours. MSD says it needs to be 4 hours, so it will be at least 4 hours. But that will allow for the periods to be shorter, so the amount of virtual time is also shortened.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Schulheim.
Yes, I thank you for this. I want to just very briefly say that I agree with some of the public comment earlier, some of the things we heard last year. The weather person thinks it's going to be a huge ice event. We closed schools preemptively because of course we would. It's a safety issue. And then it rains all day. Well, I'm not going to have any heartburn at all about my kid not going out and playing in the rain. So but if it's proper snow, well, then that's another story. I would love for my child and every other child to go out and play. So I think there's, and it's great to get the clarification on how and when. But regardless, I just hope that we use some good sense going forward as to how we apply the snow day to what type of weather, and then being able to shave off a couple days at the end as a result would be fantastic. Yeah. So anyway, thank you.
Just to respond to that, because we where I came from, we would have some pretty rough days, and we really did try to take into account those days where we felt, man, it would be nice just to let the kids have a day. If we know there's going to be a significant amount of snow coming, we'd probably say, let them have that day. I think that would be our judgment, because I too have a kid that I know would want to go outside and play too. And I think too, to one of the things that Mr. Mosier said earlier, you also have this situation where, because of the amount of snow, could also create power outages. So those types of things we wouldn't say, let's go and move forward with a virtual school on a day like that when we know we're going to get heavy snow, because that creates inequities. We heard that from the speaker earlier today about some families that already don't have internet connectivity. So we don't want to further perpetuate that. We would be very wise in how we would apply those days.
If I could add one thing to what Dr. Bedell said, it also allows you the flexibility. So you all remember last year, right? We're going to get a snowstorm, and so we make the decision and it rains, to use your example. But if we tell parents, if we convey that everybody has to take their devices home, and then we tell parents we're going to make that decision in the morning when it rains and doesn't snow, it's a virtual day, not a code whatever day.
Okay, great. You still have a light, Ms. Ellis. Is that new or old? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. All righty, moving on to consent items. Item 6.01.
May we bundle the two?
Yes. Move to bundle, do I hear?
So it's not as big bang for our buck as it was like 10 of them, but still.
Okay. Do I have consensus? All right then. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Madam President. So the superintendent recommends that the Board of Education authorize the award of contracts number 23 CN-023 classroom addition at Crofton Middle School to Towson Mechanical Inc. in the amount of $5,862,500, and Item number, contract number 23-083, large kitchen equipment, cooperative agreement through the state of Delaware contract GSS 2686 to the Douglas Food Stores, Inc. in the amount of 3 million, in the amount of 3 million.
So moved.
That is, okay. I see a light, Ms. Corkadell, is that you? Okay,
Just really quick, I just want to express my gratitude on behalf of the Crofton area. This is a long time in coming. And, you know, we have a lot of moving priorities, but in this particular case, there was just no way to reroute those kids through that school well. And believe me, our principals and they've found a way to make it work and really make the community thrive. This is going to create an environment that will definitely enhance, enrich their performance, and I think help alleviate some of the other issues, secondary issues that come up when we end up with crowded schools and just older schools with older widths of hallways to get people through better and a better educational environment. So thank you guys very much for everything.
okay. Seeing no more lights, Ms. Howell.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Moving on to action items, item 7.01, administrative personnel appointments. Dr. Bedell.
Superintendent recommends that the personnel listed on the attached sheet in your binder be promoted and or appointed.
So moved.
Seeing no lights, Ms. Howell.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 7.02, personnel. Dr. Bedell.
The superintendent recommends that the board approve the actions as stipulated on the attached sheets in your file.
So moved.
Seeing no lights, Ms. Howell.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Item 7.03, policy code AE wellness.
Thank you, Madam President. For this presentation, we will have Esquire Jeanette Ortiz. Did I do that right? Did I?
Jeanette Ortiz, Esquire.
You got it.
All right.
Good afternoon. For the record, Jeanette Ortiz, Legislative and Policy Counsel. Before you today is Policy AE Wellness. It is on third reading for the board's final approval.
Okay, any questions? Did you want to?
At the appropriate time, I'll move to adopt.
I see no other lights.
Yeah, I'll move to adopt the policy as written, barring technical edits or formatting.
Seeing no lights, Ms. Howell.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. Item 7.04, Park Elementary School schematic design.
Thank you. The superintendent recommends approval of the Park Elementary School addition schematic design, in the amount of $6 million.
I'll move. So moved.
Okay, seeing no lights.
Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Corkadell?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Mr. McGrath?
Aye.
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Great, thank you. Item 7.05, filling of a vacancy on the Executive Committee of the Countywide Citizen Advisory Committee, the CAC. This we bring to ourselves. So would a member like to bring it forward? Ms. Corkadell.
I move to appoint the representative for the South River Cluster.
Second.
Okay. I see no lights. Ms. Howell. It's
Mr.
getting late.
Silkworth,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Corkadow,
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim,
Aye.
Mr. McGrath,
Aye.
Dr. Tobin.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
If I may, I
Yes.
just want to welcome, now that it's passed, I want to welcome Amy to our South River Cluster community as a representative. And I look forward to working with her as well as our other newly appointed and existing, our veteran members of the CAC. It's a thankless job. It is a hard one. And it is well valued and goes a long way to improving our students' quality of education.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, welcome. Okay, moving on to review items. Item 8.01, award of contracts. Dr. Bedell.
It's just
It's just a review.
Yeah.
Right, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so I know, my fault. So no questions?
Move to adjourn.
Oh.
Unless there was a question.
No, I don't see a question. Okay, do I hear a second to adjourn?
Second.
Do I have consensus to adjourn? I think I do. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.